Okay, we are live. We are live. So let's get this thing set up now. Give a few minutes for people to join in. All right, let's give that a second. Go ahead and share this. Okay. All right. So, shalom to my brother Vaught Parker in the building. Dimitri Elder. What's going on, y'all? What's going on? Just give me a second. Let me share this. All right, get this. Make sure you hit that thumbs up on the way in. Hit that subscribe button if you're brand new. Make sure you share this video as well. All right, we're going to chat a little bit here. Okay. All right. So shout out to Dero Yahoo Bendora. Peace and blessings. Omen Nemo. Peace to you as well. One love. Shalom, shalom. Gerald Wood. Shalom to you as well. Yehoshua Shamar. Shalom. Judas Redemption. Gerald said, can you talk about the flea doctrine? Yeah, I guess we can get into that as well. I'm going to open up the panel in 1 second. So before we do that, I'm going to have to share this a little bit. Make sure you share this as well. All right, make sure you share this as well. Let's see. Okay. All right. So with that being said, peace and shalom, family. This is your brother Divine Prospect of Kingdom Harbinger Ministries. And we are live. Shout out to Tony Israel, Judah in the building, Jacob James. What's going on? So tonight is going to be typical freestyle. Decided to do another session tonight for y'all. Yesterday was really interesting. Shout out to Lady Watt in the building. KZ, what's going on, my brother? So yeah, yesterday was really interesting. Those of you who are signed up for the Patreon, I'm going to point something out to y'all real quick. I'm going to point it out again towards the end of the session. But I want to show you guys something on Patreon real quick. All right, so just give me a second. I'm going to show you what we got going on here. All right, so let's see. Let's do this. Okay. So we have a drawing going on right now on our Patreon. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in so you can see that. And these are for those of you who are part of Patreon. You can be eligible for this. All you really have to do is just follow the instructions there. It's called the Bill Paid in Full. It's a live drawing that we're doing this upcoming Friday. But the submission deadline is on Tuesday. Okay, so here, special thanks to all our patrons who have supported our ministry thus far. We have hit our milestone of 81 patrons. Woohoo! Your sacrifice has kept us afloat so we can do great things in the community. Now it's time for ROI, return on investment, for your just generosity. We will be having a live lottery drawing on Friday, April 3rd, 2020 for all eligible applicants. In order to be selected for the drawing, inbox us here or email us at kingdomharmony@gmail.com your bill invoice up to $200. The deadline for all submissions is Tuesday, March 31st, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We look forward to rewarding one fortunate winner who can use a boost during this trying economic crisis. It's the least we can do for our supporters. Shalom. All right. So I'm going to post the link so that you guys can join the Patreon if you're interested in joining the Patreon. All right. So let me just put that in here real quick. All right. So those of you who are already part of Patreon, you have an opportunity between now and Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. To submit your bill invoice. All right. You can either copy and paste it and set it as an inbox message through Patreon, or you can email it to us. Anybody who's interested in supporting our ministry, you can also sign up for our Patreon. I put the link there, and you will also be eligible for this drawing as well. So you can sign up today and pledge 5, 10, 20, 50, whatever you want to pledge, and be eligible for this as well, right? So what we want to do is pay somebody's bill in full, okay? So all you got to do is send it to us. We're going to pay it up to $200 and get a free break. You know what I'm saying? And we want to do this as a thank you. We give back. This is just what we do at KHM, right? People invest in us. We invest back into people. We're not just trying to sell you something all the time. We want to give things away. And we've given a lot of things away, hundreds of dollars worth of items we've given away already, right? So I want to say this is a special thank you to everybody who has been supporting the Patreon, and anybody that's new that wants to support the Patreon. This is a great time to do it because you can pledge $10 and win this lottery and get $200 back. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have nothing to lose by supporting us and everything to gain. And as you know, we also do our book suggestions as well. So we release new books on there almost every week that you can access for free. You ain't got to pay a dime for it. We give you the link and you can read it for free. Okay. We have also other giveaways that we do as well. Random giveaways. We gave away a basic biblical Hebrew language pack. We gave away a cast and lot set, and we gave away a gift card. And there was another item that we gave away on the Patreon. On this channel, we gave away over $100, well over 100, almost $120 worth of gift cards we've given out already. We're going to start back into doing our gift cards. So the next Freestyle Friday, we're going to give another gift card away just for tuning into this broadcast. All right. So again, like I said, I mean, this is a great time for you to sign up for our Patreon to support us. So this way we can give back to y'all for y'all supporting us. All right. So I'm gonna leave that on the screen and I will be right back with y'all. All right. So shout out to Hot Shot Trucking and Real Estate. He says Shalom received his lots. He was the winner of the Cast and Lots giveaway that we did on the Patreon. So he went and he got that. So I'm glad he got it. Hope he's enjoying it. All right. Okay, I understand, Doro Yahoo. No problem, man. I appreciate everybody that's been given to the Patreon. But again, like I said, we're going to continue to give back, right? We're going to continue to have these bill paid in fulls. This is going to be something we're going to do monthly. You know, provided the support that we get, and then the gift card giveaways, the book suggestions where we, you know, give you a suggestion of a book to read, and then give you the link so you can access it for free out of my digital library. You can read it for free. We have other giveaways we have lined up for this month. We got 2 more giveaways, and then the bill paid in full giveaway coming up in April. Okay, we have that coming up in April. And this is just the stuff that we're doing, you know, to give back to people that support us. Also, don't forget, we have our GoFundMe as well. Hold on, let me fix this. Let me fix this camera real quick because it's doing too much focusing. So let's take care of that. All right, that's done. All right. So also, don't forget, we have that GoFundMe that we're utilizing. So that way we can look out for the community. All right. So here, as you can see on your screen, this is our COVID or COVID ID 19 quarantine support for civilian survivors. So the people out there that's being economically burdened due to this coronavirus pandemic. A lot of people can't afford to wait for a stimulus check. So what we're doing is we're raising funds and dispensing it to as many people that ask us for help. We do a screening because we don't just want to give just anybody money, you know, who may just be taking advantage of us. We really wanted to go to people that actually do need it and that have a sincere need. So people have been sending us receipts for their purchases when we give them the money, so that way we know it's actually going to something that we've given it to them for, right? It's just a temporary band-aid until the stimulus check comes or they're able to find work again when the economy starts to pick up. All right. So if anybody is here, you can definitely donate to this. I'll drop the link also in the chat so y'all can donate to it. So here's the link right here. Y'all can go ahead and click on the link and donate if you can. If anybody here needs any kind of support, financial, you know, advice, you know, anything during this trying time, here's the email address right here. Shout out to my sister 916 Shan in the building. You killed that reading in Parsons, sis. You killed it. Matthew 5. You bodied it, sis. That's what's up. Okay. Like I said, it's overdue for you to be on this show. All right, sis. And just, you know, just feature you, let you do your thing. I'm going to send people your way as well. You know, because you have a little bit more time than I do as far as the language. So we can talk about setting up a session. We can sponsor you on behalf of KHM and set up a teaching session that can go through you. And I can just, you know, jump in to monitor it or whatever the case may be. But I want to send more people to you, sis, because you're a beast on that. All right. I'm good, but you a beast. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, with that being said, family, please, if you can, here's the GoFundMe. The link is in the chat. Please support it. Shout out to everybody that already donated as well. We raised almost $2,000, man. You helped us take care of 10 families. And we're trying to get some more funds raised so we can take care of more. We got like 5 more people pending asking for assistance. And right now we cannot give because we've given everything out already. So if you guys can give some more, please give. If you can look up there, we have 524 shares, which is great. You know what I'm saying? That's how many times this was actually shared. So I'm grateful for everybody that's putting the word out. If you cannot donate, that's fine. You can just share the link. All right. Just share the link in any group that you can, social media, everywhere, wherever the case may be. All right. So Lion Bear said, why did you say the viruses are living? Okay. I'm going to get to that. And Lion Bear, I'm going to open up the panel. So if you want to get on and talk about this, we can. Like I said, I got tons of documents on this. And even in my PowerPoint presentation that I'm doing, I'll explain that even further. All right. So I want to see if you know about the full family of viruses, because there's more than one type of virus. Right. And it's also a virus that you may not be aware of, but I'm going to put you onto game and show you about this. All right. I want you to understand this because I've read a great deal or plethora of works in regards to the opinion. This is not a matter that's been settled in academia. So I've taken a position on a controversial matter because the term life is very relative. There's no definitive definition for it in academia. OK, so, you know, the consensus can sway either way. Right. Especially with more you know, investigation, discoveries that come along, etc. So you asked me a question, and I think that was interesting as you just asked that. But if you want to have the discussion, we can, right? I don't know if you follow me on Facebook. I already posted an article on Facebook that explains the position on why some people say that it is alive, and I say it is as well. If you look at the evolution of viruses as well, there's 4 different theories. All right, I support 2 of those 4 theories, and pretty much like a supportive kind of role that the 2 theories support each other. There's 4 major theories. And with those theories of evolution, looking at viruses, their current state today, and the different range of viruses. There's one virus I'm going to explain to you and ask you about how it's able to make its own proteins. You can't do that if you're not alive. OK, and the discovery of this virus that I'm about to tell you guys about, the biggest virus that exists on the planet, has changed the scope of whether viruses are alive or are they dead, how they evolve, etc. So unless you know all of this information than trying to kick me down for saying why you say it's alive. You should know better. Goes to show that you don't know what you're talking about, right? You're just revealing your own ignorance, right? When simply you could have just left it at, why did you say that viruses are living or alive, and left it like that? So we can then open up and I can give you all the information. But since you added that last part, it's showing me that you are ignorant. So Lion Bear, if you want, I'm gonna send the link. You jump in and let's have a discussion on this, okay? So before I do that, let me stop this real quick. Let me stop the screen. So I want to share those things with you guys. Really good stuff. I'm gonna give you some book suggestions. If anybody wants these books, we can email it to you, or you can just sign up for our Patreon and get access to all of these books at no charge. I do want to do some book suggestions for you guys because, you know, we're still talking about ancient pre-Israelite culture here. You know, I didn't lose that, but because of the coronavirus situation going on, I think that it's pertinent for us to address that. That's a high priority matter right now because it's affecting the livelihoods of everybody on here. You feel what I'm saying? But I have tons of book suggestions. I want to bring up a book here for you guys as you guys can go get yourself and check out. Let me show you this. This is a great book right here. Great book right here. All right. Yeah, let me show y'all some books. All right. And again, if y'all interested in books, let me know and I can either email it to you if you request it, or sign up for the Patreon. You can pledge $1, $5, $10, $20, $50, $100, $1,000, whatever, and get access to all of these books. Okay. But I want to show some books to y'all that I think that y'all will like. And maybe in the future, I can do like a quick lesson or something on it if y'all interested in it. But it's good to read the material first so that you can follow as I'm sharing information. Okay. So I'm going to bring up 3 books for you guys that I think it'll be great for you guys to take a look at. Where's the other book at? Let me find the other one. Hold on. Where's the other one? All right, here's the other one. And let me get this third one right here. Where is it at? Yeah, I got hundreds of books, man. That's a throwback book. Let's see. Okay. So let me show these to y'all real quick. All right. So here we go. All right. This is the first one here. This is Figurative Language in the Ancient Near East. Okay. Edited by M. Mindlin, M.J. Geller, and J.E. Wansborough, excuse me. School of Oriental and African Studies. All right. This is it right here. This book was published in 1987, but it's still a great read. Really, really good read. All right. So this is one book right here that I'm going to put up this week on the Patreon. Here's the other one, Biblical Hebrew Grammar Visualize. I love this book because this book actually constructs the language in a way in which you can visually see how things are related, right? As far as its syntax and its affinities, right? It goes deep. We go into the 5 quasi-verbals, verbless clauses, and they go into non-tree markers, and they show you things like discontinuity, construct particles, and things of that nature. It's really good. It's an excellent book. You know, if you into the language, see if you see up here. Oh, let me zoom in. I don't know. Let me zoom in so y'all can see. So you can see how this thing works, right? So they're breaking down for you how they show certain things right here. See pronoun, verb, preposition, enhanced phrase marker, the enhancements mode. And this is pretty much how it breaks things down. And it's good because it's almost like the lexicon that I have, the classical Hebrew dictionary, classical Hebrew lexicon that I have, which breaks things down like that. And the UBS Hebrew lexicon that I got as well, that I showed y'all that you can get access to online. All right. But this is a great book for people that are into the language. And it just breaks things down so easily for you. It just makes it good to grasp, but it's good for beginners and people who are already experts or advanced or intermediate. Like me, I'm intermediate into the language, right? So if you guys want that, like I said, this will be going up on the Patreon this week, or we can email out to you individually. All right. The other book here is Archaeology and History of 8th Century Judah. All right. So this is another great book. It's published in 2018. And it has some great reads in here, right? Judah's Neighbors Near and Far. Images, Merchants, and Mercenaries. The Kingdom of Israel in the 8th Century. Bethsaida, Philistia, Transjordan, Egypt and Judah in the 8th century, the land of Judah, ancient technology, daily life. He shall eat curds and honey, food and feasting in late 8th century Judah, the pottery assemblage of the 8th century, a concluding observation, Judah under Assyrian rule, religion and ritual, death and burial in the 8th century, Judean pillar figures, and I went over this before. So I even had a debate with a brother where I brought this out. Enculturating children in 8th century, religion in 8th century Judah, biblical and literary, scripture and inscription, the shock of Assyrian imperial ideology, and the responses of biblical authors in the late 8th century, the biblical writings in the late 8th century, prophetic discourse on Israel, blah, 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 blah. All right. So I wanted to show that to y'all if y'all interested in any books to read while you're in the house. Again, we can email them to you, or you can just sign up and pledge for the Patreon. If you pledge for the Patreon, you get access to all these books and more for free. Okay, this is just something that we're just doing on the Patreon because we want everybody to be well read and be able to follow the things that we talk about here. Okay, and that's the link for the Patreon then if you're interested. All right. Let me see. Gatherer of Nations. Shout out to the sister Revolutionary Me in the building. What's going on? Judah's Redemption. Shalom, Mari Rika tuned in. What's going on? What's going on? Janelle, Mrs. Yah over money. Shalom. RBG Hebrew TV 2020 in the building. What's going on, Mike? Mike in the building. Yassar Yahawada. What's going on? Shalom. My sister Nisi's PC's in the building. She says shalom, shalom, mishpachah. Okay. So I just wanted to show y'all some good reads. Like I said, sign up for the Patreon. You get access to all these books and more. Like I said, we have that big giveaway that's coming up. To those of you who just now tuning in, I need y'all to check out this giveaway that we have going on our Patreon. Again, we are really like the only Patreon that I know of in the Israelite community that's actually giving back like this. I have never seen nobody do that, and it's good. I want to be able to inspire other people who are doing this to step their game up. You know, as you can see, we're willing to pay a bill in full. If you have a bill up to $200, all you got to do is email us the invoice or inbox us, copy, paste, and inbox it to us through the Patreon messaging portion or section, and we will pay your bill for free. You ain't got to pay nothing. Because you've invested in us, we are giving you a return on your investment. Not only you get these free books and these other giveaways, we're actually going to pay your bill. Okay, up to $200. And I hope somebody takes advantage of this. Because so far, I posted this 2 days ago and nobody has responded to this. We didn't get no emails, no inbox messages. So it seems like, you know, the Patreon members, it seems like they may be good. You know, the people who sign up for Patreon and they give, it seems like they may be good. Like they may not need it. You know what I'm saying? And what we're going to do is if they don't need it, what we're going to do is we're going to donate a portion of that to the GoFundMe, right? So that we can then dispense it to people in need. So if nobody from the Patreon takes advantage of this, it'll just go towards the GoFundMe for people that need help or need assistance, right? But either way, like I said, I mean, we're just giving this away. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have nothing to lose signing up for us. For our consultant, our referral program, our consultant program, we pay you for signing up. We give you money up front for signing up to do business with us. You don't have to come out of pocket for nothing. If you work with us, if you partner with us, we incentivize anything, any kind of partnership with us. We incentivize it, right? So if you want to help out with the credit repair debt elimination program called Jubilee Manumission, once you sign up, we give you money, whether it's a referral program or the consultant program, right? You get $10. If you sign up for the referral program, you get $20 if you sign up for the consultant program. Natural Path to Eden, right? Which is our Natural Path to Health consultation program, right? If you sign up, we give you $10 for the referral, and we give you $20 for being a consultant. We give you this as an incentive to work with us, right? Nobody's doing this. All right. Nobody's doing this. Okay. So I like I said, I don't know, who else is doing this in the community. But my concern was it needs to be done. Like, these leaders need to give back and help the people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just keep asking and taking, because it's like, what are you doing with the funds that you're raising? Do you have anything allocated that you can give back to the people? You know what I'm saying? It's like, maybe that's just me. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Whatever the case may be. All right. But like I said, this is available, to all of my Patreon supporters. You guys, if it's one person that requests it, then that person wins by default. You know what I'm saying? So if y'all want to take advantage of it, fine. If you don't want to take advantage of it, that's okay, because those funds will be reallocated to people who need it. All right. But again, this is something that we're doing for the community. And like I said, I'm not seeing nobody do this. People was always asking you, give this, give this, give that. But what are you giving back to us? Information. That's not enough. I can't feed my family with information. You know what I'm saying? It can help. Yeah. But immediately liquidable, I can't do nothing with it. So we give back. We give gifts. We give gift cards. We pay your bill. We do GoFundMes to raise funds with people that have economic hardships. We're doing our part. Okay. So shout out to everybody that is part of the Patreon. And if you're not part of the Patreon, you need to sign up, so that way we can make a difference. Okay. Let's make a difference. Invest in us. We invest in you, invest in others. And we give you thank yous like this. All right. This is our a bill paid in full drawing that we're doing on Friday, April 3rd, 2020. And the deadline is this Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. All right. So KZ, you don't have to be competent at all. You can have zero knowledge in it and we'll train you. Okay. The training is not even that long either. It's very simple training. We train you on what to do, right? You get 25% commission of any paid services that clients buy into for the referral program. So it means if they buy into one of our $200 services, you get $50. And if you want to do the consultant, which is referring and then doing a follow-up work with them, you get 50% commission. So if it's a $200 paid service, you get $100 off of that. Right. So if you don't, let's say you say, oh, I don't have no money to give to KHM, but I want to give. Hey, I want to pledge to Patreon. Sure. If you want to pledge to Patreon, we can sign you up for the referral program. You can refer people, or sign you up for the consultant program where you make money, and then you can take a portion of that money and you can give it to us, donate it to KHM, and then keep the rest for yourself. There's a lot of people that need work from home gigs right now. We're offering employment if y'all want to take advantage of it. You know what I'm saying? If y'all are fortunate enough and y'all don't need to take advantage in it, well, invest in us so that way we can give back to more people that need to get work. So we are being part of the solution. We're not here scamming you conspiracy theories and just teaching your head off. We're actually trying to do something tangible in the community. Okay. All right. So Yasar, any of the tiers, 10, 20, or 50, right? But there's other benefits that comes with those tier packages that's outside of the regular stuff that we give. So the book suggestions, these giveaways is available to any tier. Okay. But each one of those tiers, you also get other benefits with those tiers that's distinct from the other tiers. Okay. Unless you get the $50 one, which is inclusive of everything. $60 one, they're the gold tiers for members. And then if you want to do 100 or 1,000, that's fine as well. It's up to you. Right. But again, if you do invest it, we can do that. Right. So Tony said, how can I invest and buy some of your shirts? So we have several shirts for sale. We have a coronavirus shirt that we're working on that we will be revealing this week. You guys can take a look at that. Those funds will also go towards the GoFundMe. So anybody that buys our new coronavirus t-shirts, it's truth is greater than coronavirus, right? And then, you have COVID. We renamed the acronym, okay? And it's courage over fear. Hashtag courage over fear. It's a really nice looking shirt. And once we're done with it, designing it, we're going to present it to you guys. And it's all the t-shirts that we sell is charity based, right? Everything goes towards either providing free assessment, consultation services, or it goes to like GoFundMe's or other things that people may need in the community. So every time you buy a t-shirt, it's going towards something charitable, right? So that's extremely important for y'all to know. And if you want Tony Israel Judah to invest in that, I appreciate that. Email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. All right. And Yasar, Yahawada, all you got to do is sign up for any one of the tiers and you get access to all the books for free. We're going to be post books every week on there, and you can get access to these books for free and not pay a dime for them. You ain't got to buy them from, Amazon unless you want a physical copy. You don't have to sign up for Kindle to get it. We give it to you for free. You get access to it for free. Okay. All right. So, let me see. Okay, I think I'm looking just to see what y'all saying here. Okay, cool. So family, now that that's done, I just want to make sure you see what we are actually doing for the community, what's going on. Don't forget, we also have that Facebook group as well, right? The same thing that you see on the screen, COVID ID. And this is for any kind of civilian survivors, right? Providing support. We have that Facebook group there as well that you guys can sign up for on Facebook, where we keep everybody informed on what is going on. All right. All right. Okay. So with that being said, family, let us get started. Let's get started. All right. Shout out to Shannon here. Thank you so much, sis. I appreciate that. All right. So family, let's do a Q&A or panel discussion. It's up to y'all. We're 30 minutes in, so let's kick it for another 45 minutes. I think that should be good. We keep this as a short session. But what I'm going to do real quick before I share the link, if you go to the Patreon, what I did was I parsed the video that was on Sonetta's channel yesterday, and I edited it and I put it out on Patreon. That video will be also released. The edited version will be released on this channel. It'll premiere on Tuesday. It'll premiere or tomorrow. I'm not sure. It'll premiere, and then once we premiere it, you guys can watch it. I'll interface you guys while we're watching it. And if y'all want to do, super chats or leave comments or whatever, you definitely can. But I will talk about it, right? And if you want to see it for free, because I'm not charging you for it, but because it wasn't on my platform. But if you want to see it for free, you can just go to Black News 102. I don't know how many people in here see. I see some of y'all all talking about it. But if you want to go ahead and check it out, you definitely can. It was really interesting, right? It's on Sonetta Studios. It's called The Coronavirus Update with Ankh Raborn, DivineProspect, Corey, and Shefreen. All right, you guys can go back and check that out. Again, like I said, it's on Sonetta Studios. Okay, now in that, and again, where's Lion Bear? Because we're going to talk about these viruses. All right, we're going to talk about these viruses. All right. I do this. All right. So I want to say, for the record, yesterday was really interesting. The one thing that I don't like is having to rush. And most of the time on Sonetta's platform, whenever I speak, Mac 80 says no virus talk. I have to talk about the virus. Okay, got to talk about it. It's just real briefly. If anybody want to bring it up in Q&A or the panel, that's fine. Shout out to Keontae Gates in the building, Jetson Silencio, Glenn Rogers in the building, Randall Johnson. What's going on? Rando, I answered that question in the coronavirus session that I did. So you can go back and check out that live stream. I also showed you the Clear Lungs Extra Strength, which will help to strengthen your upper respiratory system. So that way, if you are hit with it, you can overcome it. Also, make sure you're getting all your vitamins and minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, and supplements. You can get them from mostly organic whole food vitamins, which derive their vitamins and minerals and the extras from actual organic foods and nothing synthetic that's made in the lab. Okay, which is extremely important. If you want to know, what brands to get or whatever, let me know, and I can put it up. But just let me know, okay, and I can share it. But at the end of the day, I shared all of that yesterday. So yesterday was a very interesting discussion. Sanada was going live because Ankh was responding to Zion Lex from Zion Lex's videos that he put up. And people were sending the video to me and saying, oh, look, Sanada's live, and Ankh is on there, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, Ankh is on there. I was like, man, that's great. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, all right, cool. So, I started, typing in the chat. Sanada saw me typing. I said, Sa, send me the link. He sent me the link. And the rest was history. If y'all go back and watch that video, again, it'll be on this channel. And if you're signed up for Patreon, you already saw it. That was really bad, man. Ankaket, the real black atheist, the God killer, always preaches about scientific literacy, but he's not really literate in the specifics of the science that he's talking about. He's talking about vaccinations. I'm extremely familiar with vaccination. I've studied and I've researched vaccinations. I know people in the medical field. I do citizen science, so I work on other projects in the medical field, in the realms of microbiology, etc. So I read the material in it. So I know what vaccines are. I know how they work. There's 3 different types of vaccines. It's a killed vaccine, your attenuated vaccine, and your vaccines that's based around viral proteins. Okay, those are the 3 types of vaccines they have. They also have another vaccine where they shoot you up with antibodies, right? And that can help people who have already been infected with the virus. The other 3 are preventive. This one is if you actually have the virus, they can pull antibodies out of blood serum, and then they can transfer to you to give you temporary. It's not permanent. It's just temporary to help you to neutralize the virions that's in the bloodstream, so your immune system has a chance to bounce back up and the body can actually recover. All right. So on there, like I said, I don't like talking fast. That's why I'm going to do a presentation. So when it goes up, people can take the information, use it. They can take it and peer review it, critique it. Doesn't matter. The bottom line is I want to contribute, right, constructively to this conversation. And when I realized that Ankaket is over here pushing for vaccines as the only solution, and he represents the conscious community, it's extremely scary. Right now, mind you, the majority of the conscious community does not agree with that position, but they are trying to catalyze the community into accepting vaccines. I'm pro-choice, so I'm neither directly for or directly against vaccines. I'm for pro-choice. I'm like, look, people need to be educated on what their options are. Don't just impose vaccines. Let people know what other options are out there and provide them the science that backs up alternative options. Okay. So the moment that you tell people, oh, the government should impose this because y'all don't know how to think for yourselves, is an insult to anybody's intelligence. The fact that people were there on that platform goes to show that they are a little bit more conscious than your average everyday secular individual on YouTube or in the world. So you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. So being on there, I realized that Aunt kept cutting me off and Sanada was going to cut my time. So I had to speak fast to get all the information out, show all my references. And that's the thing. Ankh showed 2 references. That the whole time there, I showed at least 12 or 14 references. I don't even know how many. I just kept showing references. And I wish I had more time to delineate on each one of those articles, but I didn't get an opportunity to explicate on any of that because, it's like they advocate for scientific literacy, but when you bring stuff out and you read from sources and expound on it, they don't want to hear it. So it's like, so what are you really pushing there? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's your agenda? Are you getting checks from the pharmaceutical companies to get people to take vaccines? Like, how's this working? And that's all for the record. I never said I was against vaccines. I'm against anti-choice. I'm against superimposition of something that you are forced to take because they're not allowing you to choose. I want to inform people. So if they want to go lobby and be proactivists against this, they can take the information they need and go and do it. Okay. If they want to know what other alternatives are there, like I said, listen, let's say 95% of the population gets vaccinated. 5% is not. What are you going to do about that 5%? You know what our solution is? Let them die. Let them die. And I hope they die. This is what he says. It's like, what? This is the mindset of the leader of the Amun-Ra squad, who represents the conscious community. You feel me? So this is really, to me, this is really like, where are you going at with this? You feel what I'm saying? Like, what is your agenda really? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's bugged out, man. Assalam Mahdi said he's not literate with linguistics or the English language. I mean, he has a reading impediment or impairment. where he reads stuff, but sometimes his reading is not that good. I also notice like when he makes posts, sometimes the English grammar is really not that good. And that doesn't mean that he's retarded. You know, I would never say that, or he's slow, or I'm just saying, like, if you're not the most articulate person and you cannot read thoroughly, then maybe you shouldn't have the biggest mouth. Okay. And that's the issue. Like, you need to humble yourself and just relax. If you don't know the science like that, then you don't know really what you're pushing. And it's crazy because the sister, she came on there and she was talking about a vaccine injury that her daughter had, and she had interfaced with Unc about it before, and he dismissed it or overlooked it. And what I was simply trying to do on there is provide a source so people go back and research it. And they got upset. Oh, don't show the source. Don't show the source. Then I was talking to Son. Then I said, hey, son, I got a GoFundMe that we're raising money to help families in need that are suffering through this economic crisis. Can I share it? He's like, no. I'm like, okay. I don't know. Even though I bigged up his channel, told people to share his channel, like the channel, or like the video, and bigged up his GoFundMe. I said, hey, I got a GoFundMe here, you know, that can support people who are in an economic crisis during this pandemic. And he wouldn't allow me to share that. So a lot of times when I go on there, I'm like, you know, you know, obviously there's a bias there, you know, and that's something that I understand. But you'll see, once I shared a lot of information, a lot of people hit me up, was like, man, thank you for that. And they're like, yeah, good thing you shared this and shared that. I didn't know about this. I didn't know about that. So even though I have to face all of that hardship going on that channel, there is some benefit from it, right? People do benefit from it. And a lot of times those type of environments, like it was like 3-on-1, you know what I'm saying? It's like 3 of them against just me. And like I said, I'm okay with those odds, because with the conscious community, I face that all the time. It's difficult for somebody just to talk with me one-on-one, right? They need a whole squad or a team, or like, I don't understand that. I don't understand that. But anyway, yeah, sorry, we got different books. We got a book on survival tactics. We got a book on nutrition. We got a book on New Testament textual criticism. Oxford book on Jewish culture. It says Jewish or Jew culture. We have one on the Remembering Abraham, which is a great book. We have a lot of books there, man. I think I got about 8 or 9 books. Maybe 10, I'm not sure. But this week, I'm going to be putting up 4 more books this week. I'm going to put 2 of the ones that you've seen here with 2 more books. I'm going to add 4 books this week. Next week, I'm going to add another 4 books and just go on from there. We have tons of books, okay? Jetson, email me, and I'll answer that for you. Khalid is eternal. What's your question? Tell me what your question is. So I just want to let y'all know that it's very interesting that the conscious community, and I'm not going to say the conscious community, certain individuals in the conscious community, like Uncle Ket, the real black atheist, the God killer, and people that either cheerlead for him or that's on his squad officially or whatever the case may be. And this is not all of them. Some of them are cool, right? But the fact that y'all talk about scientific literacy and you have a Hebrew Israelite who you call pseudo off the back, he said open access and open research in citizen science. He said that's pseudo. He didn't even know what it was when I asked him. I said, do you know what it is? No, I don't know what it is, but it's pseudo. What? Yo, that was incredible, man. That I was just like, wow. And then I asked him, have you looked at the sequence genome for the actual virus to understand its affinities with other viruses, understand its pathogenic capabilities? You know, do you understand why people are asymptomatic? Do you know which one of the immunoglobulins, which is your antibodies, are the ones that the body creates in order to deal with it? I mean, just simple things that people who study virology, immunology should know. Because if I'm going to say, look, there's alternative solutions, I got to know this stuff. And if I'm going to say, hey, there's phytochemicals that have similar efficacy with what vaccines do, I have to explain to you that I know what I'm talking about. Like I gotta be able to explain to you the science behind what it is we're talking about. Otherwise, it would be pseudo. It would just be my opinion. It don't work that way. And I'm not gonna do that. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, like I said, I just think it's really important for us to be scientifically literate. I know there's Israelites that say, no, we shouldn't. Well, that's the white man's science. And it's not the white man's science. It's not. You can use a methodology. It's only the white man's science when you agree with all of their conclusions. But if you use the same methodology and then you go through the data and you work your way up and you create your actual or a paper or a position, right? And then you can explicate that position to an audience, you know, who are privy of that subject matter. You're using your own black mind to come up with this stuff. You're using the same research methodology that is objective, but you're going through the data from your own perspective and using the data and the research methodology best practices, you're reaching a particular conclusion. That has nothing to do with the white man's science, okay? Because if you're saying the Most High is the creator of all things, did the white man create all the things that we see in nature? No, he's creating methods and studying these things. You can change the tide to that. And that's why citizen science and open research exists, for you to get involved so you can turn the tide of things. So you can find ways to lobby against public funding for the direction science is going, because it's not in alignment with something that is more objective. That's agenda-based. There's things that you can do to get involved to change the landscape of things. But most of us, oh no, that's the white man's science. It's really crazy, because when you understand archaeology, anthropology, linguistics, as far as language, certain literary devices that is in ancient Near Eastern cultures, you get a holistic perspective of Israelite culture. More specifically, what we teach here, ancient pre-Exilic Israelite culture. All right. So again, science is awesome. Science does not take you away from your culture. Only if you're dogmatic will science take you away from your culture. If you're not dogmatic, learning science is not going to take you away from your culture. And I know that's for some people that might be, oh my, what are you talking about? If you take some time, that goes to show that you may be new to this channel. Take some time, go through the material that we have uploaded on here, on the live streams that we've done, and you'll see how science is pertinent to us reconstructing and restoring our culture. All right. Facts, Kevin G. And not only that, culture is also observable, testable, and repeatable. Culture. And I went over to this before. Formulaic prayer is observable, testable, and repeatable. When you pour libations, when you do anything, any customary thing, even if you carry out a statute, law, and commandment, you can use a scientific method and apply it onto that cultural precept and see if it's observable in our environment in contemporary times. Is it testable? And is it repeatable? And what happens is it becomes a self-correcting system. As you learn more, as you grow, you're able to refine the scientific method that you're applying upon your culture. And you use that to reconstruct and restore the culture. You take all the data available on it and you reconstruct and restore it. I've done simple examples on how to do that. I give an example in regards to Leviticus chapter 19, verse 26, 27, where it talks about shaving the sides of your hair. Do not mar the sides of your hair. And I'm saying, well, the problem with that is everybody has a different interpretation, but nobody is looking at sister cultures. Canaanite culture is the one that Israelite culture was trying to be opposite of. So if you don't understand what the Canaanites were doing, you cannot properly carry out what the commandment is that's there. So that's a simple example of looking at things, or the science of things, and expanding your horizon, pulling all the data in and being able to reconstruct and restore. Culture is your anchor. As long as you anchor down into the culture, nothing can sway you away from that. And that'll be a testament to see whether or not you are fully convinced and persuaded on the square that you stand on. Some people are not. It depends on where you're at. All right. So, Kayal, if you want, I mean, we discussed this. I discussed this before. But if you want, yeah, I got a book up here. I'll put it on my screen. I shared this book on here already before. Let me pull it up real quick. I'll pull the book up here. I'll put the book up here on my screen. All right, here it is right here. All right, this is a great book by Peter Mark, Portuguese Style Luso-African Identity, Pre-Colonial Senegambia, 16th to 19th centuries. Okay, so again, Yes, sir. I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, so I have this, and I have maybe about 7 other articles that speak on it in the academic field, right? So if you want to use this as a reference or any other sources, we can definitely go into them and use them. Talking about this, if you want, like I said, I'm gonna open up the panel in a few, and we can discuss that. But the panel's also going to be open up to anybody that wants to come on the panel and chat. All right. So just give me 1 second. I got to step away. I got to step away for 1 second. I'll be right back. All right. So, the bottom line is, like I said, scientific literacy is important, especially when you're engaged in communities outside of yours and you're trying to actually defend. Glenn Rogers says, "Can we talk solutions?" Yeah, it's fine with me. I'm okay with that. So with that, let me go ahead and Jeremiah Judah, I already answered that. In regards to that, I explained that after the Exodus, the Israelites were living amongst the Canaanites for a certain period of time. Other people groups that were there join in also with the Israelites. And after about the collapse of the Bronze Age, then we had the emergence of a new people, which is called the ethnogenesis in the central countryside. And when they were being buffered by the Philistines, who was an offset of the Sea peoples that was encroaching upon their territories going towards the east, that's when these people rose up and resisted against them. But because they were there, living in there for hundreds of years, they would have been considered Canaanites to anybody, the Egyptians, to the Hittites, or whoever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? So I've already went over that before. I've already put my workout on that. So I mean, it's there. My work is there on that, right? What my position is in regards to that, right? So shout out to Mika One in the building. What's going on, sis? I know you was there and you seen what was going on. You know what I'm saying? So all right. So let me go ahead and open up the panel real quick. Whatever you want to talk about is fine. Like I said, I'll give it maybe we at 54 minutes. Let's do 36 minutes and let's just talk. And then I'm gonna close off early tonight. But like I said, don't forget, go to our Patreon. We are paying somebody's bill up to $200 All you got to do is pledge on our Patreon to be eligible for that. All right. And I'll drop the link in there one more time for y'all to check out in case anybody here is interested in doing so. And then you will be eligible for us to pay your bill. We're giving back. Okay. All right. So let me grab the link. All right. So here it is right here. All right. So the link is there. Anybody can click on it and join in. Like I said, we have 35 minutes. Let's keep this as a short session tonight, but there's a link right there. Donnell Jones, what is a good video of yours to show an Afrocentric that thinks the Bible is plagiarized from Egypt writings? I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of videos out. I mean, we can go into that right now if you want. I think probably the best thing would be Lion Bear. I hope you're there as well. You want to talk about if virus is alive or not. Let me know if you're there. We could talk about that. But I would say the best video on that is a video I did on the development of the script that the people of Israel used officially in the 10th century BCE. That will probably be the best one. Now, when people say that it was plagiarized, that's the dumbest thing ever. That is extremely what they call pseudo. Okay. Nobody in academia says that. Nobody in academia says that. So when somebody said that something was plagiarized, I mean, you got to prove it. That is a legal term. Okay. That was not used during that time. We use that contemporary today. They did not use that term back then. There were several sayings that was not original to a culture, that was just something that cultures just adopted. That doesn't mean that somebody was plagiarizing somebody else's work and pass it off as their own. Like, that's kind of crazy, man. So anyway, I have the panel there. So again, if you want to join the panel, I'll drop the link again. Here's the link again. You can join the panel. We can have a brief discussion. We're kind of early tonight. So there's a link. Click on that link and you guys can jump in. Facts, Kevin. Facts. All right. So shout out to Ivry. Ivry, you can unmute your mic.
Hello. Hey.
What's going on? This is Brother Shema?
Yes.
What's up, my brother?
What's up, man? Did you want me to start talking, or were you gonna go to somebody else, or how are we gonna do this?
Yeah, if you want, you can share a little bit if you want. Ask a question or whatever the case may be, and then we can move on to whoever else is on there.
Okay. So my question is going to be about timeline and framing of biblical history, because I think that's very important when it comes to figure out who Israel is ethnically, and as well as the patriarchs and stuff like that. So what time period do you think Abraham was in from your perspective?
If Abraham existed, it would be around I would say the 20th century BCE.
20th century BCE. Is that early Bronze Age? I'm trying to think.
No, that would be Middle Bronze Age.
Middle Bronze Age. Okay.
Right. So it would be hand in hand with Middle Kingdom in Egypt.
Okay. I want to kind of talk about, I know it's probably important that we start at the beginning of everything. How old do you think, you say you believe in theistic evolution, right? And you kind of, are you on the fence with the 6,000 years, or just don't believe in it?
No, I'm not on the fence at all. I don't subscribe to that. That right there is Bishop Usher's timeline that he created based on a mathematical proposition he made from counting up the different ages of the patriarchs in the text to come to that conclusion. And from there, young earth creationists were born out of that. I'm not saying that position is wrong. That's just not the position I take. So I believe in an old earth. That's my position. And as a theistic evolutionist, I believe that everything that we see has a divine fingerprint on it as far as creation is concerned, right? And we see this same thing universally throughout any ancient civilization that also had that same understanding based on their observance of nature.
Oh, so do you believe that Adam and Eve were like the only two people, or that there were more people?
Well, according to something that I had shared back in 2014, my proposal and better understanding that is like the first thing is the text is not a scientific treatise, so it's not trying to give you a scientific explanation directly of, hey, this is how man came to be and stuff like that. It's teaching you something. By the time that we get it, it's designed to teach you something, right? So the reason why I say that is because there can be a degree of speculation in regards to understanding the scientific knowledge that the people back in the Iron Age would have had in regards to their environment, right? Which would be slightly different than some things that we have today, unless you subscribe to what they believed. So with that being said, what I was saying was that, you know, when mankind was created, Adam and Eve would represent a distinctive clad of individuals, right? That had a degree of consciousness, right? Where they then developed into, you know, tillers of the land, which is, you know, one of the many survival trades, right? Because you have hunter-gatherers, you have agriculturalists, you have those who are pastoralists, and we see these things develop over time, right? We start to see Abel and what Abel did, Cain and what Cain did. And this is just showing us the different phases in man's evolution in regards to the different trades of survival that he had, right? So man started in a self-sustaining garden, but then through to migration had to develop other trades to survive, right? So I look at it a little bit differently. I can talk about it from a theological perspective, but looking at it holistically in an anthropological model, what the text is showing is the social memory of the people that goes further back, that goes to show different things that was in their history as a people. And this is how they're putting it together to tell it to future generations, right? So that's my position on that.
But okay, but what about when it comes to like the genealogies? Like it mentions people like Enoch and Noah. You don't think that any of these people were real, or do you think that all of this is
I mean,
metaphor?
In regards to Enoch and Noah,
and you know the others as well, Methuselah.
Sure.
And all.
So there are certain events that occurred that we see in various cultures, right? Which means that there is some kind of memory of some events that has happened that is consistent across the board. When we get to Israelite culture, Israelite in the form of the text that we have today was written much later than what we get from other ancient Near Eastern cultures, right? So what they're doing is from the perspective of their culture and the patron deity that they subscribe to, they're giving you their vantage point of what occurred. So then we have characters in there called Noah, Enoch, and so forth. So is there any way for us to validate that outside of the cultural literature? No, but does that mean that this is not true or it is true? We don't know. I would say according to the writers, this is their telling of these events that occurred, and this is part of their social memory, right? So when I look at these things, I see these things as, you know, part of the culture, and these ancestors wrote this for a reason to teach us something today, right? So do I believe that there was a flood? Yeah, there was several local floods that happened in that region, and this is why we see it throughout the Near East, right? So other cultures, they have a name for the individual that was responsible for getting people through the flood after working with a deity, and we see that Israelite culture, they have their own version of that, right? So because I subscribe to Israelite culture, the literature is there that is a collection of these social memories that go back in time. And then looking at this, it helps me to better understand the psyche of not even the scribes, but the culture as well. What really shaped them in regards to their ethnogenesis, right? How they came to be about as a people. And they have to connect themselves to certain events that occur based on the divine inspiration they're getting from the deity, right? So when we talk about Enoch, Enoch was a character that existed in the culture, is then their social memory as a person that existed. Same thing with Noah, etc. And we can see that similar characters that exist in other cultures, and they gave them other names, right? So if we're looking at it from a biblical perspective to say, look, the Bible was universal before Abraham came on the scene, then that would make sense, because if we look at Noah and his sons, and they're going about to repopulate the earth. They're going to bring this knowledge of the history with them, and it's going to permeate through other cultures, right? According to the Israelite perspective, right? So that's my position in regards to that. And I did a lecture on this way back in 2014. And I also, when I was debating Jabari, this is of the same position I took when I was explaining it to him. So I have a lecture you can go back. It's called Crows on a Straw Man, that I did part 1 and part 2. And if you go watch part 1, then I further elaborate on it in part 1.
So when it talks about, though, like 900 years, Adam living to be that old, I of course assumed that, once he ate of the fruit, and once him and Eve ate of the fruit, they lost their immortality, and now, each generation of humans is dying more and more. Their lives aren't as long, because by the time we get to Abraham, he dies at age, I think, 100 or something, or 75.
Correct.
He dies at a pretty
so
old age.
We see a decline in the age of man, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the flood account, it talks about that the canopy above bursted open and the depths from below bursted open, right?
Right.
And when you go and study anything about the ecology of the atmosphere, you get to see that over time, and it's the same thing is done in the realm of archaeology when it comes to dating things, that the oxygen content that we have today is much less than, let's say, 5,000 years ago, right? 10,000 years ago. And what happens is when there's less oxygen, that has an impact on the survival rate of beings that depend on it, which would be any kind of mammal. As far as us is concerned, we're mammals, right? So that would explain why we see a decline in regards to the age of man. If we go to ancient Egypt also has these god kings that they describe in several of their records, right? The Palermo stone is one of them. The Turin's Kings list is another of them, where they show these god kings that live for a lengthy period of time, and then all of a sudden that time period gets cut short where they're no longer living for an extended period of time. This is all stuff that's in the social memory of the people that is consistent in ancient Near Eastern cultures, right? So I would say the drop in age would be disobedience is one of them, but the second thing is, the culture is trying to explain, well, why does man have a limited lifespan today when we've heard stories that they've lived for long periods of time, right? What can better answer that? Number one would be man's disobedience to his patron deity. The second thing would be the flood and how it reshaped the atmosphere, right? And also the environment in regards to available resources to consume, because now after the flood, man started eating meat, and prior to that, according to the text, he wasn't eating meat. So that also changes your lifespan as well. So there was a lot of changes that occurred that we can actually see it from that perspective. But if you want to deal with it from a strictly theological lens, I could say that, the text is trying to tell you, like, hey, this is why the Most High said his spirit will not strive with man, because man's wickedness, every time he's given an opportunity to do something, he disobeys. So it goes to show that the patron deity is removing himself from his creation. And in doing so, the creation, their dependency on a creator is limited. So therefore, they start to wane away, right? They start to what they call waste away.
Hey, if you don't mind, if I want to add something to that, if you actually look at the fossil record, you can actually find what's called megafauna and other types of vegetation that was actually during that time. And we could tell through fossil evidence that plants as well as animals had different metabolic rates as well as different growth rates. And we find that the nutrition and the cellular structure of, just say, fruits and stuff and vegetation, which is totally different, to the point where if we had actually live samples, we could see how those effects will have on our cellular structure today. And I mean, you could do diet studies today and find that certain nutrition does affect age and lifespan and everything else. So to do studies with those specimens from back then probably yielded some crazy results, man. I mean, we're talking about macular degeneration, Alzheimer's, all types of things that can cause death in our 80s and 90s now. Probably didn't occur until hundreds of years if those things were kept up and cells were getting the proper nutrition. But I would look up megafauna and different types of species in the fossil record that no longer exist today.
Yeah, I have a
versus-
couple of books on that. I'm about to pull up on the screen. Since you mentioned, I got a couple of books on I could show for a reference. But keep going, Kevin. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like horseradish, for instance, right? Actually, horseradish today is like the size of like a pencil, probably around that. Horseradish, fossilized horseradish back in, if you look in the geological record or in the fossil record, was about the size of an oak tree. You have ants and butterflies and different types of animals that are very small now, but if you look in the fossil record, they were way larger. Armadillos were the size of Volkswagen Beetles. So the thing we have to ask ourselves is, what was going on with the ecology and with all of the wildlife that was going on at that time?
Correct.
And when we look at the outrageous claims, or to a secular mind, outrageous claims that the Bible make about what animals did and what they ate and whatnot, you can kind of see the result of us relying on meat for our source of proteins and other nutrients. Because if, let's say, beet or bean or lentils back then, stuff that you ate that did provide protein, who knows if the protein within those foods was at an astronomical rate? Let's say
we see that from nuclear degeneration, right? So even when they use different methods of dating, it has to go with the decay rate. And the decay rate today is much faster than it was at that time. So therefore, the nutrients were more potent when you eat them then than they were today. Hence why they can support animals of the size that we see in the fossil record.
Right. The caloric demands are met.
Correct.
You have things such as that whole lie actually came from Charles Lyell, who's the father of geology, who came up with this this term that we get from him called uniformitarianism. And basically what uniformitarianism says is that the conditions on the rates of radiometric dating, how carbon is disposed or how it dissipates, is actually the same that it was back then. But that's not true, because if you go to the Joggins formation, for example, the Joggins formation is a formation of sedimentary layers that actually form the cliffside. And if you look at the Joggins formations and look at the fossilization that goes up in there, they have horseradish that's been twisted and caught what's called polystrate fossils within the fossil record. But what they found was that there were larger animals eating this stuff and digesting it, and they actually lived off this stuff.
Facts.
But today, large animals cannot live off of horseradish. Or large animals cannot live off of the type of vegetation that they eat now.
Correct.
That's why you could have a 1,200-pound elephant that could just eat leaves. But imagine a megafauna that was the size of a 3-story building eating on a plant. I mean, it makes scientific sense.
Exactly. And the sustainability for future generations or offspring from that actual animal itself, being able to maintain that size over time. So their environment, based on what was going on in the atmosphere, not just your terrestrial environment, but your celestial environment as well, all has a bearing on how you can be sustained as any kind of species, right? And then in your genome, you have a determination in regards to size, right? The maximum size that animal can reach, right? Can either be achieved based on epigenetical things in the environment, diet, things that you eat, environments in which you live, the amount of oxygen that's in the atmosphere. If those things change over time, then that part of the genome is not going to be reaching its max potential, right? And then if we see the rate of decay is also increasing and is not as slow as it was in the past, then that can also show in regards to our own DNA and our biological clocks that over time, it will determine that our length of days is short. This is why when you go back to the actual theological question about the age of man, this is why when the deity is telling, Moshe that, hey, I'm going to give you these statutes, laws, and commandments so that if they follow it, they will live long in the land, right? That is a way of bringing restitution from a gift that was given to mankind when the deity was dealing with him one-on-one before his disobedience. So he's giving him an opportunity to regain that. Hence why he's saying that I'm going to supply you with everything that you need. This is why when you study people who take the proper med diet, they actually have long lifespans, especially the ones that's in the realm of Israel today, or the state of Israel today. They have much longer lifespans than people that eat a variety of different foods outside of the med diet, right? So the med diet itself, the Israel version, we can see in the scriptures themselves, right? And again, if they were doing what they're supposed to do, the land will yield to them, give them all of these things in their environment as forms of diet, and that will allow them to live much longer, right, in a healthier life, right? So these are things that if you look at it from, you know, more of a holistic approach to the text, is a promise of restoring something that was lost, right? So again, going into that realm of looking at the fossil record and the various stratum that's there, and seeing at the lower levels, we see that, like you said, the megafauna, the plants and how big the plants were then at that time, how big the animals were at that time, and why were they that big. And we know that the environment, both terrestrial and celestial, was much different than it is today. We know. So now when you look at the text is finding ways to answer that, right? On a theological level, how do you answer for things that we've had in our memories? Just like the Leviathan, right? This Leviathan creature, you know what I'm saying? That's in the social memory of the people. At some point in their lineage, somebody saw this and they passed this data down, right? So now you have to make sense of it in a theological position in order to orient the people towards the patron deity, in a particular, what we say, statute of commandments, or direction that that culture wants subsequent generations to go and follow, right? So I think what you were saying, Ivry, is a great question, asking these things. And it's just that when I answer holistically, right? I don't just answer, yeah, Enoch was real, but why? Why is that in the social memory of the people? What is the necessity of having that individual or mentioning that ancestor at all? What purpose is that, right? And then you got to look at it in light of the science, right? And the science in the realm of humanities, right? If you want to look at art and literature from other sister cultures, right? Or the language, right? You have some clues there. Or if you want to go into the realm of social sciences and look at anthropology, right? You can see reasons as to why these things have been put together. This is why the book that I recommend that everybody get is called Ancient Israel by Lester Grab, right? I'll put it on my screen right here so people can see this. I've shared this before, but he does excellent work in regards to just, I mean, he's like one of the best scholars in regards to ancient Israel, and even Judaism. But he mentions something very clear that I had to learn when studying Israelite culture, when I came across this book in 2015, that really changed how I looked at the Bible, in a good way, because this is the guy who, he's a Christian, right? He's a Christian, but his work is objective, right? He doesn't inject any of his theological viewpoints in the actual work that he does academically, right? So you have some people that tend to do that, and when you do that, you can kind of show a degree of bias. And I don't like when that bias is there. To me, that bothers me. I just like to read work that's objective so I can come to my own conclusion as it pertains to my worldview, right? So let me pull up his work real quick right here. I should have it right here. Let me see so y'all can see. And if y'all want it, let me know. But I think that everybody should read this book because he says something very, very important in it to help the share. I'm gonna try to pull it up the page too for y'all. Let me see if I can find it. But Kevin, I see that you spoke. Let me go to Kayal, and then I'm gonna go to KZ because I'm going in the order of people who joined in. So Kayal, if you want to say something real quick, you can, and then I'm gonna move on to KZ. I'll come back to you, Ivry and Kevin.
All right, cool. Hey, peace, fam. How everybody doing? My question is really based on, I guess, the premise that I asked in the chat regarding the Luso-Africans, the Lakatos, and stuff like that, right? And so, where do you see the indigenous West African people in correlation to the relationship that they had with the Jews or the quote unquote Israelites that came to West Africa? Like, are they the same people, or did one group of people have a position of power over the other?
Okay, so you said West African people who are native to West Africa, and their relationship with Jews or Israelites, right? I see them as two different things, but Jews and Israelites, Jews are Israelites that showed up in that region. Are they the same people you're saying? Are they different peoples? That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying that because we both know that a lot of people from Northeast Africa, North Africa, the Berber, the Amaza people, they converted to Judaism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they established trade routes in West Africa, predominantly through Timbuktu, and that's why you have the writings of the Sudan, whatever. But like, I don't think a lot of people that listen or subscribe to the Hebrew doctrine necessarily make that distinction that these were two groups of people that are completely separate, because the people who was in West Africa were definitely brought into slavery by the people who was Jews. And I don't think that that's necessarily made obvious to the general public.
Correct. So in regards to the slave trade, there were definitely some Jews that did partake in the slave trade, right? We know that. But there was also European entities also involved in the slave trade as well, right? So you have the Royal Company from England that was also responsible for the ships, the cargo ships that we see there, and a lot of the British that was going into West Africa and picking up slaves, right? We also see certain Jews doing the same thing and bringing them to certain islands in the Caribbean as well. And when you look at Pirates of the Caribbean and you study what that is, you see that that has to do with the Jews doing trade in that region as well, right? So we have a lot of these histories there. Now, to talk about that, I think this is good. I'm gonna expound on my position briefly, and then I'm gonna come back to you, Kyle. If you want to build more on the specific on Luso Africans, we can, but I want to give everybody a chance to kind of introduce a point or whatever. From my position, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, right? Because from the time that me and you shared a similar point until when we diverged, I've developed more to refine my position, right, over time. And I know exactly where you stand at today, right? So I think the best way that it can be explained from people from my community is to make points that does not cater to an Oriental hypothesis or a Hamitic hypothesis, right? Because those two things are pitfalls that people in our community fall in when they actually disseminate this information. When you ask them, hey, the peoples of West Africa, were they all Jews that just found nobody there and just started these high cultural civilizations, right? This is what some people do teach. Some people teach that no, Jews were brought there and the Jews helped them, establish these high cultures. I don't subscribe to any of those things, right? So from the sources that I use, I go to show that we have things in Arabic historiographies showing migrations of, or having tales of migration of Jews that have migrated to certain regions in the early 8th century, right, AD, where they have these records of so-called Jews or people who practice this religion or whatever the case may be, that they are making their way into certain regions during that period of time. And that's in the 8th century AD, when Islam and Arabs started making their way into Africa, because the earliest records we have of West Africa, literary records we have, is from Arabic sources, right? And then later on, we get things from missionary sources, from military sources, from merchant sources from Europe. And then later on, the people, once they become literate, then they start writing about their own indigenous cultures. And one of the issues is looking at like a group like the Igbo peoples or the Ibibio peoples, where they didn't really have any kind of literary history in regards to them as a people. They only had their cultural elements, right? Your Odinani, your Omenana, and things of that nature that they had. And then they had myths that explain certain things in their customs. They didn't have anything that was written down that we could say, hey, this is here for this amount of period of time. They didn't have that, right? Yeah. So I say the best thing to answer these things is that there wasn't just one group of Jews, right? You had several groups of Jews that were there in that region, or people who claim to be Jews. You have the Sephardic Jews that was in that region. You have some people that was called the Radhanites who did trade through there, the Majorcans who did trade through there, and had other Jewish groups who did trade in that region. And those people will be distinct from the other people. I would say the best source to answer that would be John Ogilvy's account, and I could bring it up on the screen right now. You familiar with John Ogilvy and his account of West Africa when he was there?
Not him, but can you give me what's the article name? I may be familiar with the article.
No, I'm gonna bring up the primary for you.
Okay, cool.
Yes, give me a second. I'll bring up the primary for you.
Yeah, names, man. I read the title and
yeah. That's how you got to do. That's how you do research, right? Yeah. That's how you do research. So, is this it right here? Yes, this is it right here. All right. So let me bring it up on the screen real quick. All right. And let me pull it up here. And you have the book Black Jews in Africa and the Americas, right?
Yeah, I got that.
Okay. So Tudor Parfit, he quotes this in his book.
Yeah, I mean, but
Ogilvy.
you can't necessarily use Tudor Prophet because Tudor Prophet had a completely different.
No. We're dealing with the primaries. He's a secondary source.
Yeah,
we're dealing with the primaries, and
I'm saying that his the information that he gained, the conclusion that he gained from his primaries, it actually is a little bit different than the premise that he
correct.
You see what I'm saying?
It's critical. So him and Edith Bruder, right? And I know them because I've interfaced with them because I'm part of their organization, right? Well, not now. I think my membership ended back in late 2018 because they had a hijack of the website. But I still stay in touch with them because I still want to present my paper that I'm finalizing at one of the conferences. But Tudor Parfit, his main issue was his actual venture into looking into the Lemba claims of whether they were authentic Israelites or not. And when he went there and he heard all of this, hustle and bustle about them actually having J markers for their, their priestly, or what they say, their Levitical modal haplogroup that they have, that when they went back and they redid the analysis and they saw that it did not stand up to the initial test that was done, right? But his bias is that he doesn't see any authenticity in regards to a African Jewry, whether it's in West Africa, South Africa, Central Africa, or whatever. But there are things that he has said in several of the books and papers that he has written, which I'm gonna show you on the screen as well, that I've asked him about, and he told me, hey, just put that in your paper and we'll review it, right, when you present the paper, because there's certain things that he didn't go to in depth that I really wanted to talk with him about, right? So on the screen, let me pull it up right now so you can see, because the question you asked me was there a distinction? Were they the same people in regards to the Jews or the locals and things of that nature, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me share my screen real quick. Let me go to it. All right. And but if you have that book, you should be familiar with who John Ogilvy is, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what work you're speaking of John Ogilvy, so it's kind of difficult to answer that question.
Oh yeah, his expedition in West Africa along the Niger River.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I'm saying is that a lot of those scholars, they definitely said that Jews were black people, but these are from European sources, and as you know, that they definitely blanket us, right? They put us in the same blanket. They say that, hey, you all are Negroes, you all are black, because that's the colloquial terms they use to determine people that was outside of their, I guess, their haplogroup, I guess you would say, or even their expression of their DNA. Because I don't want to go into ethnic lineage, but this is more about these people that was Europeans came into Africa, and it was a difference between the Africans and the people that was in West Africa doing trade. And like that's why I brought up the Luso African thing, because the Luso Africans definitely were not the indigenous people of that land. There were people in that land that married into
the men married the women and had offspring.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is what we're going to deal with in regards to that, because you made a good point. The important thing to understand is that when you're looking at primary data, you don't have to agree with the conclusion. You're looking at it for empirical information that is being said by the primary data. Now, their conclusion is all these people are Negroes or whatever the case may be. That is a conclusion based on the account, an eyewitness account. They came to a conclusion. So they observed something and then they came to a conclusion or interpretation. We're not dealing with their interpretation or their conclusion. I'm dealing with the empirical data, what they actually saw, what was actually told to them, what they actually encountered. And then you take that data, look at it in the lens of the other data that's there, and then you draw a conclusion or interpretation. Because this is exactly the methodology that is used by Tudor Parfit and Edith Bruder in their books, because they're the only ones that really pioneered I would say a comprehensive work in regards to African Jewry in West Africa, South Africa, Central Africa, and Northeast Africa, right? Yeah. But the question is, there are other areas that they did not dive into, and I'm going to show you some peer reviews if you want to go into it. Peer reviews of their books that say exactly what I just said. There's certain areas, gray areas, that they did not speak on. And the reason why they have not spoken up because they created an actual organization for other people to bring up works in those areas to further along the knowledge that we have of African Jewry in West Africa or other areas.
I guess my question is, and I'll digress, but like, do you think that the original people in Igbo land and Yoruba land, those people are Jews, or did they?
No, it's an amalgamation of peoples in that region.
That's why I brought up Luso, because these people were already in West Africa, and you agree to that, right? And you had people that was coming from Northeast Africa that was doing trade with these people, and
Correct.
they married into these families. So that means that the people who are in West Africa, the Yoruba, the Akan people, the Igbo people, they're not Israelites, but there are people who are Israelites that lives amongst these people, and
you mean Jews that lived amongst those people?
Well, yeah, Jews live amongst those people, and they reproduce, and they brought forth people that brought forth a narrative that said, "Hey, we are the people of Israel." Because even if you trace back to any of the Igbo people, they always trace themselves to a white person or European Jew. Like you don't necessarily see a Igbo person that says that, hey, we are the original people who wrote that book, because they didn't have anything to do with that book.
But there's a reason why they do that. Okay, and if you read the papers for the ISSAJ that these conferences are done on these various things, the reason why they do that is because they are trying to assess certain parts of their customs that there's no myth for, right? And when they see other groups that have similarities to them, exactly, they're able to tie a myth to those customs, because it may have been lost over time, or it just may not be known. Then that's when they make an affinity to say they are related to these peoples. That's an error. That I don't agree with. I don't agree that they should do that, but they've done it, right?
You are absolutely correct about that, and that's the same thing. I guess that's the reason why I'm on here today, because a lot of people in the community do not necessarily understand that. They don't necessarily understand that there was people in West Africa that were not Jews that came over here and as a result of the cargo slave trade. You know what I'm saying? And they try to engulf everything into the Israelite perspective and paradigm, as if it has some type of cultural relevance to the people who was not involved in that culture. And they go to people like Olodu Equiano, and they go to his quotes where he said, "We did things like the Jews." Equiano never ever said in his book that he was a Jew.
No, but he didn't need to say he was a Jew, right? He was saying, he was talking about the affinity based on practices, and then he said, "Well, how do we answer this?" And he gave a proposal. He never said definitively, "Yeah, I'm a Jew." That wasn't the point of him saying what he said in his autobiography.
He was showing the affinities. His autobiography had nothing to do with him professing to be a Jew or Hebrew.
No, because even some parts, even that part that we read there in chapter 1, where he talks about part of his culture or religion or whatever his name is called religion by the white people that examine it. But in that part right there, we don't even know if that's his firsthand account, but we know that it's from some Igbo account, because when they went back to go look at these practices, it was authentic. Right. So whether it's from him directly, he experienced at the age of 10 or younger or whatnot, or whether it was another Igbo that he got that data from, the purpose of him sharing that was to show that there was an affinity between his people and the Jews. Mind you, Equiano was a Christian. He was a staunch, fiery Christian, right? When he was an abolitionist and everything.
He definitely did not believe he was a Hebrew Israelite, right?
No. But he never, of course not. He never said nothing like that. That's a recent construct, right? Okay. But of course, he never said anything like that. But the key thing is, if the affinity that he's looking at, if there is some kind of legitimacy to the affinity that he is making between two groups, and then coming to the conclusion to say, well, if that's the case, how do you explain their complexion and our complexion? This is what he says. And then he starts to talk about migrations and how people change complexion over time. Mind you, he's not an anthropologist. You know what I'm saying? And that wasn't the reason why he was not writing an anthropological work, doing a cultural comparative analysis. That's not what he was there to do. He was simply talking about these affinities because of the worldview that he currently holds, which is him being a Christian. So now he was exposed to Jews and other groups of people, and he was talking about affinities. So the question is, The same thing that Equiano put out as far as the affinities. The question would be, if he's bringing these affinities out and showing that there's some kind of relationship, are there other Igbo scholars? And I'm looking at the critical ones, critical Igbo scholars. And matter of fact, I want to show you this.
Please don't mention that lady, Dr. Catherine, whatever. If you got,
I'm not talking about her.
Okay, thank you, because that's all I like. Is that her?
So let me, man, you making me pull out stuff. Hold on. You know what? Let me show this, the first source that I was telling you about, and then let me get back to you. Let me get back to you. Hold on. Let me pull it up.
And I want people in the chat to realize that me and Ron, we are actually friends in real life. I'm not debating. I'm not arguing with him. He's like, I love this dude. Like, we friends. Like, when it comes down, we can start a business together. We can do everything. This is just
about IT stuff, all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let me show you right here. So this is the primary source right here. Africa being an accurate description of the regions of Egypt, Barbary, Libya, Biladu Garid, the land of the Negroes, Guinea, Ethiopian, and Aborigines, with the adjacent inlands, either the Mediterranean, Atlantic, Southern, Oriental Sea, blah, blah, blah. And over here on the right is where the primary source is that is quoted by Tudor Parfit and Edith Bruder in their works, right? And here is where he makes a distinction between two different types of Jews. He saw the African version and the Asian variant. Yeah. He saw two different variants. So I'm not concerned about the Asian variant because those could have most likely have been the Sephardim that we see there, and that can account for them, the Asian variant, right? But the variant that I'm concerned with is the account for the natives that he says there. He said there are natives that are there saying that they're from Abraham's seed, that they're Jews. And then there's the Asian variant who he says, whether they came from the desolation of the Judeans, from Vespian, or the ones that were depopulated by the Romans and the Persians and the Saracens and the chieftains, that is a different group than the natives that are proclaiming to be Jews. There's two different groups that he observed along the Niger River, and this is what he gave account to when he was going through Guinea.
Right? Yeah, exactly what you're saying. And the point I want to bring out is because when you look at from Babylon and Timbuktu,
why are you using that source, bro? Stop it.
I'm just tying it into what you just did. Okay, you just pulled up a source to validate your position, and that source you validate your position with was a source from North and Northeast Africa, not Central.
Wait, Northeast Africa? Where's Senegal at?
Let's read the thing that you just said.
Let's read it, and then you got to read the page before it. So let me bring the whole book up so we can read the page before it, so you can see. Matter of fact, let me bring a map of Africa up so we can see where he was
at. Man, you ain't gotta do that with me.
No. It's not for you. It's for the people that are watching.
Okay.
Because people may not be following what we're saying. So I want to bring up a map of Africa so I can show you where he was at, because he was along the Niger River. That is not above the Sahara or the Sahara. That's sub-Saharan. Would you agree? Is the Niger River sub-Saharan?
Yeah.
Okay. And it begins where? In Senegal, and it ends, Guinea, and it ends where? In Nigeria, correct?
Yeah, in Nigeria. Yeah.
And that will be sub-Saharan Africa. So let me get the entire book, and instead of just that snapshot there, let me pull up the entire book, and we can look into it. I have it. Would I have it? Do I have it on my hard drive here? Let me pull it up. So I'm gonna show you the page before, because the page before he tells you where in Africa he was. This was not in North Africa. This was not in Saharan Africa. This is sub-Saharan Africa, along the Niger River, where he's seeing these two different types of quote unquote Jews. This is how he's identifying them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, but I still stand to my point that those.
Oh yeah, I know what your point is. Yeah. That's why there's a difference in opinion, so we can have these type of bills. If not, then what will we be talking about? Nothing to contrast, so that people can learn from it. So let me see if I can pull it up right here. I have it in here, and hold on, don't go nowhere. Let me get this before you go somewhere. Stay right here. Don't go.
I ain't running, bro. I ain't never ran.
No, not running, but I just want you to stay there so we can read it in context, right? Because that's important. I think I have it over here. Let me see if I have it here. Let me see if this is it right here. No, where did I put that? I have it. Is it in my downloads? Matter of fact, I could re-download it. Let me just grab it again. Hold on. I could re-download it. And I want to give you the page before that. So that would be, and anybody can get this is page, it's going to be page 33 of this book. When you read the page before it, it'll tell you, he tells you where they were at. Matter of fact, if we go into Tudor Parfit's book that we just referenced, he even tells you this was along the Niger River, going through Senegambia all the way over to Nigeria. And then he gives his position on that. I would like to show this to you as well, to get your perspective from somebody that's seen as an expert in this field from the European perspective, right? Who actually has the.
You saying I got the European's perspective?
Yeah, because Tudor Parfit is a European. He's not African.
I mean, but like, just information doesn't have a perspective. Information is information, because the majority of the information that you bringing out is European as well. So like, I think that's like an ad hominem attack, bro.
Wait, slow down. Because you just made this, that if you want to stand to that, you said the same thing. You said, oh, when we go look at these accounts, these were people that were talking about Negroes and throwing them all in one kind of category. That would be how Europeans classify. So they have classification systems in order for them to identify and understand indigenous practices. Would you agree? I didn't say it's European information. I'm saying their perspective of it, a European. It's not like an Igbo writing this history.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
the indigenous practice Odenani, and they're saying, look, this is our real culture. We have nothing to do with Jews. That's going to be different than a European that is writing about it. They're looking at the same data, but they're coming to different interpretations based on what the purposes of their work.
Yeah, well, keep that same energy for the Danonite, whatever his name is.
yeah. There's several accounts for his work.
That same energy for those people, though. You know what I'm saying? Don't just use it on that.
No. Have you read his works, and have you read the Jewish and the academic experts that are able to parse through what was authentic and what was conflated over time?
You talking about the Danonite guy?
Yeah, from
yeah, he's talking about the people who are the North Africans that came into the West African region, set up different empires, set up trade routes, and it's like
where did he say this was at?
No,
he's in the 9th century AD. This is before the transatlantic slave trade.
We can deal with the Fatik al Shadan, whatever it's called. The people of the black people in Timbuktu. I forget the exact title of it, right?
But he was not in Timbuktu though.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, but that's where people get the information and they build on that premise though.
So Eldad Hadani's work in regards to the things that he witnessed when he was in the quote unquote interior of Africa is going to be in the region that we will call today Ethiopia, right? In that region, or the Horn of Africa region on the African side. And he was along the Nile River, right? So he was along the Nile River going south, which would be upper, going towards the higher elevation. And he said in those regions is where he saw these lost tribes at, and where they had their own communities and they was autonomous and all of that. That's the region he's talking about in the interior of Africa. He's not talking about North Africa. He went to North Africa later. He went there later to tell other Jews in Algeria about the Jews that he saw in the interior of Africa.
But Eldad the Nanite was not talking about West Africa either, though, right?
No. I didn't say that. I just gave you a region.
No, bro. I'm not saying that you said it. I'm saying that as a collective, the Hebrew Israelite community.
Okay, let's me and you build, right? Okay. I understand that that's where they're coming from. I'm saying he's talking about those that were in the interior of Africa along the Nile River. Now, the next question is if the accounts that he's saying that there were Jews in that region, which people in academia say, yeah, that part of what he's saying is true. Now he goes and says that there's a river Sabantyon that's there where on the Sabbath it don't flow. Now that's something different, right? They'll say, look, that's kind of conjecture. We know we can just write that off. But when he was talking about the different regions where he was at and giving details of the places he was at there, we know that he was physically there, because you can go back and verify all the different points of the geographical landscape, the cities, and different, I would say, landmarks that he saw, that we know that he was there physically in that region. And he said, this is what he saw. Now, he added magical things because he's religious, right? He had a degree of religion to him. And this guy really only spoke Arabic, didn't really know real Hebrew like that. So he had a tinge of religion that is affecting the other ways that he exaggerates about other things. But when you parse it out and look for things, this is how you can tell how authentic something is and what is fiction, right? If I write a book in South Africa and I tell you about a river that's there, a mountain peak that's there, if I tell you about material culture of the people that's there in that region, and people say, you know, read my work because I add some other kind of fantasy to it, it's like, yo, this guy was never there. But then you parse that part and I say, man, either he was there or somebody he knows was there, because he has a lot of these geographical and topographical features correct. And he knows about this area and that area. You had to have been there or known somebody that was be there to get that information. So what I do is I parse that data out, and then I look at that in light of other things, and I acknowledge the parts of it that is fantastical, right?
But so we do acknowledge that is historical fiction then, right?
In some areas of it, yeah, I agree with that. I never said his entire account is 100% authentic, because there's so many versions of it, right? Yeah. That's what makes it difficult to know what was really his account, whether he conflated things or it was his constituents later on that made up these fantastical tales of the things that he did in that region. So when you look at the work, they look at everything that's written about this, the versions that we have, and the Jews that were sharing his data, because, you know, it made it all the way to Ashkenazi Jews in Europe, where they started sending letters on expeditions to talk to those so-called Jews that was in the region that Eldad Hadani was in. They were sending letters. These rabbis were sending letters there, and students of Gil Noah, they were selling letters there because this is what they believe based on his account. So, and mind you, from the 9th century all the way to him in the 18th century, that's like 900 years, and so many other tales was added. So now that we have the academic method to actually parse through all of that stuff and see what is authentic, what's not, I use the authentic data and say, okay, if this, at least if this is true, well, what can we do with this data? The other data, all right, whatever, I don't care about that. This data, what do we do with this data? Just like Ludo Equiano's work, he's giving us data, right? If he's giving us data, what do we do with that data? Do we dismiss that data and say, oh no, what he's saying is not true? Or do we go back and look at it and say, well, you know what, he's making some great points. Is there any truth to this? If not, throw it away. If there is, let's investigate it. Because the things that he was actually writing about, people were saying, oh, Equiano, he was never even born in Africa. He was over here the whole time. But damn, if you read his work, there's so many things in there that's particular. Either he was in Africa and got kidnapped at the age of 10, or he knew somebody who was a Nigerian that lived in that region and give him that information.
Yeah, I mean, I won't disagree with you on that. I mean, but like we both know that he does have a birth certificate and a birth record here in South Carolina. You know what I'm saying?
Let me explain something to you. So if I have a child and my child was born in America, let's say home birth, and they didn't have a birth certificate, or excuse me, and let's say they were born in, give me another country outside of America, I don't know, Italy or something like that. Let's say it was born in South America, and then I bring them here to the US. In order for them to engage as a citizen, they need a birth certificate, right? Well, because they're gonna want to know.
That's based on 2020, though, bro. Like,
no. You said that's based on 2020. So, what is the difference between birth certificates at that time and today? Are you saying that didn't happen back then? And if so, then I can't bring you no accounts of that occurring back then. People being born in other areas and having birth certificates saying they were born here in the U.S.
I'm not saying that didn't happen at that point in time. I'm saying that if you have a birth baptism, you typically do that at a very young age, right?
Yeah, pedobaptism.
Yeah, and so he would have to have been very, very young when he got baptized, because we have the birth certificate. I mean, the baptismal record of him. His name is Gustav Vassas, and he reverted back to his perceived Igbo name, Olodu Equiano. And so, like, what we have to do is say, hey, maybe this is a historical fiction book. We can't necessarily take this in consideration.
But if it's historical fiction, there's still going to be elements in it that is authentically historic. The fiction part you can parse out. I'll give you an example. The Bible, right? For example, the Bible talks about several cities in the text. If somebody says, oh, the Bible's historical fiction, right? Does that mean the cities that they talk about and the regions that they are, that we do excavations today and find today, those elements are historical. They're authentic. They can be verified through archaeology, right?
Yeah, I'll get you on that. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is my job is to look for that. I don't care about the fiction stuff, whatever. Okay, yeah, let's say that those parts are fiction. What about the data that can be verified? And if it can be verified, existential of that actual work, what is the truth to it? Why is it there? What do we do with that data? So as an Israelite, the burden of proof on me is to say, look, I believe that I'm identifying with my Israelite ancestry, which is amalgamation of other ancestries in West Africa. I never teach that there's some pure Israelite blood that we all come from. I never taught that. That's not something that I teach. I never taught that. I said there's an amalgamation of Israelites interfacing with peoples in West Africa and infusing the Semitic bloodline into that region with certain groups, not all groups, and that those groups that have been infused, that we actually see them make contact in, and then later we see the Sephardi there in those regions as well, have been taken into transatlantic slave trade. Now, does that mean they were in the millions? Because, you know, about 10 million plus Africans were taken from the west coast of Africa. Are you saying that all of they were Jews? Now, people say that. That's kind of difficult because we don't have that many people migrating to West Africa to be all of those Jews there. That's my position. You know, some people say, oh yeah, 1 million Jews went in there and they multiplied and they make up all of West Africa and the coast of West Africa. I say, no, I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to the point that there were migrations into West Africa on several occasions before Europeans got there. And some of these people from the writings that we have of Arabic travelers that are saying that there were migrations of Egyptian Jews that went and settled in regions in sub-Saharan Africa, you have to deal with that data and say, okay, if they're saying this, who are these Jews that are migrating there? They're not Sephardic Jews or these Luso Africans. Who are they? And you got to go and look through these accounts, the Tariq accounts, to say, who are they talking about?
So would you agree that the people who is living in West Africa indigenously are not the people of this Bible? The people.
Correct. Yes, there was indigenous people that were living there before any migrations happened into that region. When trade routes were opened up by Islam, more people migrated to that region. Before trade lines was opened up, you have a very dense jungle that's there, that's separating them off in a desert, that's keeping them away from other peoples in other regions of Africa.
Fact.
It was an isolate group that was there, and we can see that through the continuity of tools and other ethnic markers of people there in that region. So I don't have a fantasy or romanticize or sensational position in regards to Israelites there in that region. I'm looking at all the data. So I go back to data, I parse the data, and from that, I make an actual hypothesis. I say, is this good or bad, true or false? And then I work the hypothesis all the way till I get to my thesis statement that say, yes, Israelites have migrated into West Africa, but they were not the only people that got there. They amalgamated with other groups of people, and their Semitic bloodline has been diffused into certain groups in West Africa. And if somebody was to say, well, yeah, if I just lean on the Luso Africans, then technically, yeah, these Sephardim individuals married African women and pushed their bloodline through West Africa, on the coast of West Africa. Tudor Parter also says that in the same text that I have here. I'm going to bring it up on the book that I highlighted there. He says the same thing. He admits, he's like, yeah, you know, we have many descriptions of travel accounts into the west coast of Africa where Judaism was practiced in these areas. But the question with the Luso Africans, and this is what I was saying with, I forgot who I had on the phone with me, is the reason why you have to look at cultural practices, because it tells you what Jews influence who. If we look at the Igbo today, and you can attest to that, when they wear the tefillin, the talit, when they do their prayers, you know what Jews influenced them, right? Where they got the influence from, right? That's not indigenous.
But also we can look at things like a lot in Odinani, you have a lot of ceremonies that's done with a chicken. You know, the chicken is indigenous to West Eurasia.
Wait, hold on. I'm glad you said that, because I did a whole live stream on that, which is really interesting. I was showcasing how chickens, fowls were considered unclean. And this is going through Eldad Hadani's work and his method of killing the chickens, because his method of killing chickens were different than the rabbinic councils that was in power at the time. And if you look at his method of killing chickens, he learned that, or his Israelite tradition, because he believed he was from the tribe of Dan. The way that they kill their chickens or sacrifice their chickens is the same way that we see it done in Odinani. I did a whole.
Now, but check me out. What I'm saying is, like,
sure,
like you know, like in Ifa or Fa or Odinani, like each particular Orisha or deity has a particular, sacrifice that they want.
Correct.
Right? And like, so we got to think about this in a large.
Wait, watch this before you finish that. Just want to throw this in so you can add it. Are fowls indigenous to West Africa, especially chickens?
No.
Okay, keep that in mind, because we have a
chronology we are building on the same thing right now. I'm with you.
Right now. Yeah, go ahead.
What I'm saying is that these chickens are not indigenous to West Africa, but they work themselves into the Igbo, the Ifa systems, the Fa systems, the Vodun systems, because they were brought with trade.
Correct.
The people who was doing this trade came from Southern Asia and the Levant region, right?
There you go. Yeah.
But eventually, these exact same people that was doing trade with are the exact same people that enslaved us. And so, like, how, like,
so wait. So here's put a timeline on the introduction of chickens in West Africa, because I have a timeline. What is the timeline? What date would you say that they were introduced?
I would say
way before enslavers came there.
Yeah, definitely. I would say around 1200 to 1250 BC.
You're close, extremely close. So if we're looking at early, let's say Middle Age period, or medieval period in Europe, right? Europeans were not focused on the slave trade at that time. Right?
Correct.
It wasn't until Reformation started to happen that they were economically detached from the Catholic Church, and they had to find other means of business, right? And they learned about the trade from the Arabs that were already there and the so-called North Africans that were living in the Iberian Peninsula. So they found another way to economically sustain themselves apart from the Roman Catholic Church. So when you had this trade that was going on, it had nothing to do with Europeans. Europeans did not bring those files into West Africa. Other groups, and this is why I was saying migrating groups. This is why when we look at
purpose there, yeah, right.
Yeah. So when we look at this, what I'm saying, when we look at the accounts of the first historians, travelers, cartographers that were Arabic that were going into West Africa, they detailed these things over time. Not the first ones, but over time, they started to mention some of these things, and these fetishes that they identified allowed them to enslave a lot of those locals that were there. They were finding justifications of enslaving Native Africans there. So you see, when they start talking about it, when they first got there was no mention of no chickens or nothing like that in that region. Until over time, we started to see an introduction of it into that region before Europeans got there. So Europeans were not the ones that brought it there. And if we're going to say that the slavers, the Jewish slavers, were Sephardic, then it wasn't anybody that came from the Levant. These were people that came after 1492. Queen Isabella did an expulsion, and these so-called Sephardic Jews converted over to Christianity and escaped to Timor or in the west coast of Africa in the Senegambia region. This is much later. So this is why I look for these cultural features, these practices to say, okay, chickens ain't native to this region. When did they get there? Who introduced it? And the people who introduced it through trade, were they still living amongst these people? If so, who are they identified as? And these are questions that I will say my community has to ask, because the burden of proof will be on us. And these are things that I look for. So I told my channel, I don't know if you've been following, that I have an upcoming lecture that I'm gonna do to follow up on the one I did in 2018 that you saw a long time ago. That was just a preview. I have one that's more detailed, that's gonna have elements of my actual paper that I'm submitting for the conference on there, where I discuss these things. Because when I bring this up to Tudor Parfin and them, they don't have no answers for it. They say, oh, well, that's not what I'm trying to address. Like Edith Bruder was dealing more with the political aspect. She doesn't talk about the Hebrewists. She only deals with the second group, which are the ones that converted over to Judaism. And then she links that to the Biafra program and things of that nature, and show, hey, they felt like they were Jews because of the things that they heard from the missionaries. So they wanted to identify with being Jews because of their persecution. And they saw what happened in 1948, an establishment of Israel, and what happened in World War II in regards to the Jews. So they constructed a story to kind of validate the lack that certain Igbo, not all of them, there's certain ones in certain regions that kept their oral traditions. There were other ones that were displaced from their priesthoods and stuff that did own the Nani, that started to go towards urbanization because of colonization, and they were displaced. And then they were the ones that were looking for an actual history. They were looking for a myth or something to describe why they're there. So they started doing play-ons of the current myths to kind of justify them actually being Jews. You should never call them that. And when you call them Jews, that's incorrect. But if you're going to say that they're Jews by way of conversion, that makes sense. But this is the things that I'm bringing to this audience, Tudor Parfit, Edith Bruder, and their constituents, to say, well, why are you not looking at other features besides recent things that occurred, recent traumas that occur with these people? Look at other things such as these Arabic travelers that are talking about certain things that they did not observe initially, and then over time winds up making their way there. And some of these things, this is why I was talking about the way that you kill these chickens. The way that you kill these chickens, because remember, if a chicken is not native to West Africa, they have other animals, that a lot of other animals are there. There's a way that you have to kill the chicken, because if you look at the anatomy of the chicken, there are humane ways to kill chickens. And whenever you did any kind of practice, sometimes you kill the chicken for food. Sometimes you kill them for sacrifice, for a ritual, right? There's certain ways that you do this, that you have to learn by being in contact with that animal for a certain period of time. When Eldad Hadani was writing his works, I wish I was prepared for this discussion. I have so much stuff on this.
You know what?
He was talking about his
I haven't even began with my questions. This is just a dialogue, but like I would love to have a more in-depth conversation with you.
Yeah, bro. You know it. And what I'm saying is the things that I look at is not typical for my community, right? Because I understand the argument on both sides. And if I'm on one side of the argument, I understand what the burden of proof is on me, right? And interfacing with these people who are leading in this area do the same thing, right? So when you look at Eldad Hadani, and like I said, these are little things that I look at that are actual historical. The sacrifice of chickens, the way he sacrificed chickens was different than how the rabbinic councils sacrificed them during his day. And what academic was trying to find out is, well, how did he learn this method of killing chickens? Because we know chickens and what was not native to West Africa, but the same method that he uses to kill chickens, we find that same thing done in West Africa. So the way that you answer that, because other cultures who engage with chickens have different ways that they kill them ceremonially or whatever the case may be. The way he was doing it is what we find in West Africa, the way that they actually kill and sacrifice the chickens there. Not saying that they didn't have ways of sacrificing, they did. But when it came to the chicken, you had to be in contact with it for a certain period of time before you learn how to do proper rituals. And those animals had to be sanctified by the deities of that indigenous culture before you can even offer them. Because certain deities require certain sacrifices. You just can't give them anything. And there's a ritual that goes along with it. There's a cleansing process that goes along with it.
That's the whole question, because I was trying to figure out why that would be implemented as if it's okay. But I mean, I know you got other people on the chat.
Okay, I'm sorry, because we spoke forever, man.
All your time. I know you said you got a limited amount of time, but you're like, I would love to further this conversation with you, because we all started off at the same place, you know?
Correct.
Literally the same address and everything. You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
Like, me, you, JC, and we all went to a different direction. I'm just trying to figure out what still holds you in this direction.
You said holds me. What holds Anium to the same direction?
What do you mean?
Have you spoken to him?
Yeah, I have.
When's the last time you spoke to him?
Like conversation wise, probably like about 6
just
months.
Just generally.
6 months ago, but like as far as like on Facebook, a couple weeks ago.
Why is he still part of KOY?
Because he doesn't necessarily reach out into the other realms of possibilities.
So why is he still there? That's what I'm saying. So a lot of us still stayed, right? Gabriel's still there. A lot of us still stayed, and some of us did go in other directions, like more African.
He does not believe he's a Hebrew Israelite. He believes he's a Jew because of faith.
What?
Yeah, man.
Kyle, man, stop playing, because
bro, like.
See, I gotta ask him that now. Damn.
Like, yeah, bro. Like, he practiced the spiritual system, man. Like, not the religion. Like, he doesn't believe that he's ethnically a Jew.
There you go. That part I think he doesn't identify with, but KOY does. So he's part of an organization that teaches that. Yeah,
but that was tied to them getting back to that land, but going back into Israel, because they had to say that they were those people.
Correct.
But they are Pan-Africans at their heart. You know what I'm saying?
And so am I. We all Pan-Africans out.
That's why we friends. I rock with you.
Of course. Well, we have other things in common. You just a cool dude, but I'm saying like because we have different insights on how to fix the community that are similar. Right, because I wouldn't have this on here if the colors made up by the UNIA and Marcus Garvey if I wasn't a Pan-African. You know what I'm saying? Like, our people are everywhere, and we need to bring a solution to wherever our people are at. We have to work with the people on the continent of Africa, because that's where our people are. And I try to tell Israelites the same thing. Like, Israelites have been living in Africa, even according to the Bible, longer than they were in Israel. So for them not to have an affinity with the people that they live amongst, and for you to deny that affinity, it goes to shorten the fact that you are playing into the Hamitic hypothesis or any other kind of hypothesis that denigrates the people in that region, because they can't even trace a lineage to which son of Ham or those peoples in West Africa, because the text does not talk about them. The text does not identify them. And when you try to extend it to do so, you're reaching. Right. So it's just like, look, understand what the purpose of text is, the worldview that they had at that time, the known world at that time, and work with it in that construct. And once you step outside of that, allow the other culture of peoples in those regions, the science and whatever kind of literary works that are written, let them speak for themselves. And then from there, you work from there and try to find a common affinity. So that way you can say, okay, how can we assist and benefit this group, and how can they benefit us? Right. So there has to be a different approach to how you look at West Africa that I believe my community has to do, because if they don't, they're doing a disservice to our community in general, right? And you know, a lot of stuff that I say here, there's people that agree with it, people that disagree with it, right? But these conversations are necessary so we can talk about it. The people that I have an issue with are the ones that don't want to talk about it, because it goes to show that they're dogmatic and they don't want to confront the data that's in front of them. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to see it. I'm going to address it. And I said, I want to show you one other article, but let me get back to you. I know there's 2 other people on here. Let me get back to you.
Now, if you show an article,
wait,
I can show one too.
Look, I'm going to show you an article.
If you show one, I'm gonna show one too. We want to do that again?
But this one is from somebody. This is from somebody who disagrees with the Israelite aspect. They disagree with it. So I'm gonna show you somebody that's critical. So you're gonna show me somebody that agrees with it. That's what you're gonna have to do next, because I'm gonna show you somebody that disagrees with the Israelite paradigm, but makes a very interesting conclusion.
I mean,
interesting.
I can show you Derek Lange all day, man. You know, that's not a problem.
No. Derek Lange, come on, bro. Stop.
But
now, I ain't gonna front. Some stuff he said in there was pretty good, but he reached a lot, bro. I don't cite him. I used to.
I think he's super pseudo, and I think that people are making mistakes by judging and using that as a source to place over Israelites.
Bro, you know Moors do the same thing. Moors use his work too. You know that, right?
I ain't know the Moors use. That's crazy.
Come on. We have a common friend, Dana. You know Dana, right?
Oh, she blocked me, bro.
Oh, she did? Damn, you must have really got her nerves, bro. But you know, she cites him a lot, and she teaches in the Moorish Simultaneity of America, and they intertwine this with the Moabite theory.
Yeah, now she blocked me not because I was disagreeing with her, because I actually believe I agree with the majority of what she says. She blocked me because me and Garfield friends, so she blocked all of Garfield's friends. Yeah. So I got blocked inadvertently.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, me and Garfield cool. Me and you been cool before I even know who Garfield was. Yeah. So it doesn't matter to me who you are friends with, right? I don't have to be friends with them. Me and your relationship is valued more than whatever's going on with me and anybody else, right? So that affinity doesn't matter. For her to do something like that, I just think that that's kind of short-sighted. You know what I'm saying? And just because you have a disagreement with somebody or another group and a friend or associate of yours is part of that group does not mean you have to block them too. It goes to show you never had an authentic relationship with them in the first place. That's pretty much what it shows. So I don't care. I mean, you can call yourself Caucasian tomorrow, bro. You're gonna still be I don't have an issue with that, but you'll still be my friend.
Do that, though. I can guarantee.
Yeah, I looked at some new evidence and it's saying that we Caucasians, bro. I'm like,
a lot of things that I'll do.
Bro. Let's talk about something else. All right, let me make my rounds, and I'm gonna come back and show you some stuff. Because
can I hang out in the chat?
Yeah. You good? Yeah, and we can come back and talk about it. But I would love to see anybody else in our community touch on these things that we're talking about, because it's relevant. And if they're gonna make a position for being an Israelite, they have to address every piece of evidence that's placed on the table. You cannot run from anything. When I look at the Niger-Benue confluence theory that talks about the meeting point in a city or area called Lokoja, and migrating south is where we had the dissemination of the Kwa languages that we know that Igbo is part of, Yoruba, etc., and that follows the Bantu migration out of West Africa. You have to be able to address that in light of what your position is. You can't ignore that data that's there. It's on the table. How do you reconcile that with your position? And that's what I've done. I've looked at all the arguments and I've reconciled it with my position. Now, people may agree with it or disagree with it. That's up to the experts when we start submitting papers. This is why I have a draft that I'm continuously working on, so I'm able to submit it, so I can have experts in the field who are accredited to review it and give their take. That's the only way we can make headway so people can take us seriously. If we're not publishing any works in this arena, then it's all going to be some kind of wild theory, a fringe theory that nobody agrees with, right? So that's when it becomes problematic, when we don't start producing academic works in that region. You can only cite stuff for so long without actually putting down work so it can be reviewed, right? Critically. So let me get back to you, Kyle, all right? So next I have KZ. What's going on, bro?
I'm cool. I'm cool.
I'm
Shalom.
sorry. I
How
hope you
you
wasn't
doing?
distracted by that dialogue, but whatever you
No
want to ask
worries.
or say is cool.
No worries. No worries. I mean, I'm here for the building and edification.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a 3-part question, man. Have you done any work on who the Assyrians are today? Are they the present day Syrians? That's my first question.
You said Assyria or Syrians?
The Assyrians, are the Assyrians the modern day Syrians, or they are they another people?
So there have been some tests that was done to show that some of the people that are there today in Syria, which is a more modern term, have a relation to the Assyrian peoples, because the Assyrian peoples populated northern Mesopotamia, right? So there are infinities, but there was a lot of migrations in that region as well. So we would have to look at various cluster groups to say, okay, this cluster group of people that have always lived in this region, they have affinities to the native Assyrian or Assyrian Empire that arose in that same area, right? So it depends on what people groups. And I have a book that talks about various ethnicities in Africa and Asia, and we can tell which people groups connect back to them.
Okay.
But I would say their remnant is still in Mesopotamia.
Okay, that'll work. My second question is, being that we've come up in the culture that we've come up in, before we started to really deal with the scriptures, what are your thoughts on what's necessary to begin to give us what we need to start to separate from how our perception to a certain extent has been shaped by this country and the societies that we've been conditioned in? So
that's a great question. And the answer is very simple, right? You have to study indigenous culture. You have to study culture before colonization. And the people in power, the Roman Empire, had taken Christianity and used it as a tool to colonize and bring imperialism wherever they went, right? Which is dangerous, because if you look at Christianity in its infancy, before it started to develop into what we see today, had nothing to do with colonization, had nothing to do with imperialism, had nothing to do with that. So if the form of Christianity that people have today ties into colonization, it's a very quick question. Like when I ask Israelites, I say, hey, not Israelites, Christians, and I say, Christians, hey, your ancestors, were they practicing Christianity when they were in West Africa? And they would say no. And I said, okay, so how did they get Christianity? One wow claim that I got was somebody says, oh, they learned it from the Muslims. So the Muslims taught them about Christianity. Wow, that's interesting. But then some of them will say, no. But the gospel got to them. So I'm like, okay, so the gospel that was brought to them was brought by colonizers. Well, first it was merchants that was there. Then it was the military, and then it was the missionaries. And they all worked congruently. So now if what they're giving you, because mind you, we know CMS was there, which is Christian Missionary Society. We know what Christian groups made it to West Africa. We know what Christian denominations was here in America. We know that. We have a record of all of this. So if you find yourself having these same beliefs of the ones that went into West Africa and converted people to Christianity, or the ones that were brought here to the Americas who were then converted to Christianity, if what you're studying or what you believe has any residue of any of that, then you're not on the right path. You have to work your way from the origin to contemporary times, which means if I say that I'm an Israelite, I have to go and examine Iron Age Israel and look at the culture, because how they lived and what they did is the only way that I can get an untainted snapshot of what the Bible was written based off of. Not from Christians today and the works that they write and the stuff that they say. No, you got to start back from ground zero and go to ground zero and study the culture that way. That's why I encourage people to get into archaeology, which is a part of anthropology. But there's other types of, you have zoo archaeology as well. It deals with animals, which is important because I brought up for the community that when we go back and look at the Arabic variant of the deer, or of the, not the deer, of the what's the name of that animal? The gazelle. Thank you. I just remember the gazelle. And we see when we look at the Bene Hassan from Khunuhotep II, from his war memorial, and that they're entering in these group of Asiatics. A lot of people will say, well, they're white or they're not white. So when you look at the Arabic or the gazelle arabica, and you look at that animal today, and you look at its coat of fur, it's like a little bit darker than me, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at those depictions that was written by Ben Hassan, you see that the same complexion of that gazelle is the same complexion as those Asiatics. Mm-hmm. So when we start to look at things such as the peoples, at least during the Middle Bronze Age, that was migrating into Egypt and living in the region of Goshen, right? Biblical Goshen, or what they would say is Avaris. We know what those people look like coming into there and selling in that region. We know what they look like from Egyptian art. So I would start working from that framework instead of, looking at pictures that people draw today of white biblical characters and patriarchs. You have to go back to ground zero. You have to go all the way back and examine it from the Iron Age period to understand these people that we're talking about. And that's why I talk about ancient pre-Israelite culture, because looking at the culture and the things surrounding the culture, it gives you the best way to read the text. If you don't have that data and you just simply reading the text based on the text itself, there's so many things going to be intertwined into your doctrine that comes from Christianity and Judaism. And that was not indigenous to the peoples during that time. They didn't practice those things. They didn't practice any of that. That was foreign to them. So we got to go back to that. And from there, you have a lens in which to look at everything else in the text, right? I'll give you an example of that. When we talk about Israel in the text, the forefather of the Israelites, Yaakov, he poured a libation, right? Now, if you look at Judaism and Christianity today, they ain't pouring no libations. But why not? Even after them, we see David was involved with a libation. Samuel and the people was involved in a libation. The priest was pouring libation. That's part of Israelite culture. But it's not there. It's absent today. What happened? That's the question you ask. Why is this common custom no longer amongst the peoples? Why are they no longer doing it? 1 Samuel chapter 7, before they go to war, what did they have to do? Put away all the foreign idols, and then they had to pour a water libation and then confess. Well, where's that element today? We're not pouring. I mean, I do it, but most of us don't be pouring water libations. Why not? That was part of the culture. And then what they do today, they demonize. Oh, that libation is wicked, is evil. Well, why? That's Israelite culture. How is that wicked and evil? Casting lots. The book of Proverbs talks about casting lots. And it says that's how you can quell a strife between brothers by casting lots. Why? Because lots is fair. It has nothing to do with me or you. It's objective. Why we don't find that no longer in our culture today? Why was it taken away? Why we don't practice it again today? Go back to ground zero. Look to see what the people were doing. When you want to go and interpret parts of the text that talk about Exodus chapter 20, that says that there should be no wooden image or graven idol, right? They made terracottas because of that commandment. Terracottas did not violate the commandment in Exodus that says no graven image, because the images they were talking about in the book of Exodus had to be sewn, meaning cut through. You could only do that with stone, wood, or metal. But they created terracottas, which was objects that was created via clay, because this was part of their culture. This is what they did because of the actual commandment not to do that. This is the social memory of the people and why they didn't do it that way until the later reforms came of Hezekiah and Josiah, where they then outlawed everything altogether. So you have to go back to ground zero. And once you understand ground zero, then you can begin to see everything the way they saw it and not how we see it today. Now, if you want to say you're messianic, because some Israelites say, oh, I'm not messianic. Cool. What I just said rocks with you. If you're messianic, you need a pedigree to the original individuals that was following Yeshua. And I'm not talking about Shaul or Paul, because he branched out, was going all to Turkey and Rome and all of that. I'm talking about the ones that was with James, the one that was Cephas, that was lived amongst them, that rocked with them, the ones that was in the company of the 70 and 72 that were also sent out. Yeshua didn't just send the 12; he sent 70 other people out as well. Who are these people? Who are their offspring? When you study that, you'll see that that is a totally different perspective than Christianity today, to the point where our pedigree needs to go back to those so-called Jewish Christians. This is what Europeans call them, Jewish Christians, or not just Europeans, but the converts into Christianity, because they were the ones that lived and rocked and was around James and the other apostles and Yeshua when he was alive. And they had a particular position where they kept the law and they also accepted him as a Messiah type figure. So how
you
can
referring to the people who said they were of the way?
Correct. Of the way, the Ebionites, the early Nazarenes, who then later on in time in the 4th century started to change their doctrine because of the Nicene Council and the persecution that was going with people who did not pick a side, whether they were Jews or Christians. A lot of these things happen over time. So you have to go back to ground zero. Ground zero is if Yeshua was an Israelite, right, from the tribe of Judah, and he walked and he lived, he was a real person, then if I'm not going to get my information about how to interpret his life and the things he taught, it's not going to come from church fathers. It's going to come from the people who are native Israelites that lived amongst them and that lived amongst the disciples. So you got to go back to ground zero. When you do that, guess what? Christians will say, oh, you're a heretic. You know why? Because the apostolic church fathers, the apologetic church fathers from the 2nd century, they wrote treatises against these individuals, calling them heretics. And then when you get to the 3rd century, they did the same thing. All the way up until the 4th century, where these people started to die off, where they either converted to Christianity, Judaism, or they were persecuted. So I go back to ground zero, look to see what their beliefs were, like what did they subscribe to, and that is my pedigree to connect back to those indigenous peoples, not what's in Christianity today.
So that's a major point. Coming back to the question that you asked, as far as why aren't a lot of the customs, that we see in the scriptures still being practiced today. And if I had to produce an answer to that question now, it would be because of the fact that the scriptures fall into the hands of people who don't come from a biblical culture, and that leads into my last and third question, because I know you got to get to the next person. What is your perspective on the Most High still giving his people revelation today? Because I'm a proponent of that. I think we still need communion, with the Ruach Kodesh to have a lot of the introspective needs, met in order for us to have a lot of the things that we need, to move the way the Father intends for us to.
I think that's an excellent question. So I'm going to answer it really well. The only way that we can get revelation is if we do a form of divination, right? People in our community don't know what divination is. They think it's evil, it's wicked, and it's wrong. But the Israelites perform divination. This is how they were able to get things to work. If you want revelation, you have to practice divination. Well, what's a form of divination? Formulaic prayer. Prayer is a form of divination. So if you want to get revelation, and it's the same way in any indigenous culture, there is a ritual for divination. Israelites had their own ritual. Most High says, no, don't go to the other nations around you and get divination from them or their diviners, because we have divination here. We had the priest that was here through Ephod. He can pull out of his thing, the Thummim, and cast a lot to say whether something was yes or no. And or you had a means of pouring libations to confirm something that was done. Like when Yaakov was wrestling with that messenger, afterwards, he set up a stone, right? When he had the dream about messengers going up and down a ladder, he put a stone and he consecrated it. Like these are things that we are supposed to be doing as a form of divination. It's a process to divination. Praying is one. Casting lots is another one for different decisions. So when you understand formulaic prayer, and I give you an example of that, Nehemiah is a great example. Chapter 1 is a good example of one of many formulaic prayers, which means during that period of time, individuals were praying and getting answers. Today, I don't see people praying and getting answers like that. I see it as a hit or miss. Why is that the case? If you're saying that you're the Most High's people, then if you pray something the appropriate way, you perform divination the appropriate way, you should get an answer. And you shouldn't be like, God works in mysterious ways. Where's that at? That's not in the Bible. I don't see nobody saying that. It's either you had an answer or you didn't. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, look at the Philistines. The Philistines had prayed because they wanted to know when they had the ark what to do. We need to know where this thing came from, why people are dying, what's going on. They performed divination to know whether or not that they should keep the ark or not, and then they let the ark go because they realized it was the source of things happening based on their form of divination. Israelites did the same thing. When they prayed, they got an answer. So today, in order for us to have revelation, we must perform divination to the Most High Yah appropriately. We can't just pray amiss or pray whatever. People who subscribe to the New Testament, James says that you know, you have not because you ask not, right? Then he goes on to say is that because a lot of you, when you pray or request something, is to fulfill your own pleasures and desires. This is why your prayers are not getting answered. And then when anybody else prayed in the text, they had a particular relationship with the creator because they were practicing their culture. So they understood the creator much more than we have thousands of years displaced from that. Right. So when I do, like, I give you a last example. I did a whole lecture on meditation, biblical meditation, right? Because when I ask Christians and Israelites, how do you meditate? They keep giving me a Taoism form of meditation. And I'm like, but that's not biblical. That's not what they were doing in the Bible. So why are you performing a ritual, because that's what you're doing, a ritual that is not even aligned with the text? So that's when I told them, when we go into the language and we understand the poetical forms that were used, because you have prose and poetry, and you see it in the Psalms, right? There was a particular way that meditation was put forth. It's the musing. So what you're doing is you are muttering something, or you are saying something under your breath. You're musing over it, and a lot of times they were then orchestrated to a melody, right? And that is how you meditate. You muse over your murmurs. That's how you meditate. That's what the psalmist was doing. That is biblical meditation. So if we're not performing that form of divination, then we will be out of touch with the patron deity that we subscribe to, because this is what he prescribes in the text. He says,
is that connected to when the scripture talks about the groaning?
Correct. Because those groanings are done in a low tone under your breath, and then sometimes there can be sounds or things that are being uttered that cannot be interpreted, because you're allowing things to flow unhindered. See, when you see David talk about, let's go get the enemies and dash the babies' heads, the infants against the rocks, and that what happens upon biblical meditation, your murmurs is unfiltered. Whatever is in your heart, your leb, the center of you, you let it flow out. Good, bad, neutral, indifferent, whatever. You let it flow out so you can muse over what you're bringing before the Most High. And you muse over, or you go into deep contemplation or reflection over the things that you're allowing to flow out of your heart. Because that's how the psalmist was doing it. If he was performing it that way, why are we not doing the same thing today? I shouldn't be there sitting down, my legs crossed, hands like this, going, that's not meditation. That's not biblical meditation. That's another culture's meditation. So you're telling me you're using a cultural practice from a foreign culture that was being performed to foreign deities, and you're putting that before the Most High and say, hey, Most High, take that. Hold that. That's for you. That's not part of the culture. So I want to get people back to proper divination of biblical practices. So that way we can get in touch with what we call the Ruach, or the spirit nature. And therefore we can get sanctioned revelations. Every revelation is not sanctioned from the Most High. Because if you're not going through the proper means of divination, then whatever revelation you get could be coming from any entity. It could be coming from your own self. So that's why, and if you look at my channel, this is why you don't see me talk a lot about prophecy. You don't see me go into prophecy deep like that. A lot of brothers and sisters make channels based off of prophecy. Christians make channels based off the prophecy, and it's a big thing. But I say, if you don't understand the culture, then none of the prophecy is going to make any sense. If you don't know the culture, then the prophecy is not going to make sense, because if you don't see what they saw and speak the way they speak and do the things that they do, then what you're doing is you're taking something that's translated in English, looking at it in a contemporary time period, and trying to make an interpretation from that. It does not work that way. This is why we have people in our community make false prophecies, and then they take absolute way of numbering, a numbering system and reckonings of time, and try to say, oh, the end of the world is going to be in 2012. End of the world is going to be in the world 2000. The Bible says in 2019 that the 40 years are going to be up. We still here. What you mean? August came and went. We still here. So you got to be careful with that, because when I speak about prophecy, it's based from a cultural vantage point. And I'm very careful with it, because I'm not going to say, what's going on right now? These are the end times, brother. And then I die, right? I live another 40 years and I die, and the earth is still here the same way. This is why when the apostles came to Yeshua and asked him, when are you going to restore the kingdom? He said, whoa, it's not for you to know those things. Go and be my witnesses into the cities and put in that work, son. Don't ask me these questions, man. That's what I'm focused on. Put in the work. Prophecy is going to be here, but what are you doing to prepare? This is why autonomy is important. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes, we can still get revelation, but if you do it through proper divination, and a lot of us don't even understand how to do proper divination.
I think that goes into a lot of how we've been ruined by Greco-Roman Christianity because of the fact that, us, identifying as its people, revelation from the Most High is foreign. And I think that's a major problem.
Exactly. So you got to go to ground zero, do the research at ground zero, and then work from that data to interpret the text. And then once you're using that to interpret the text, then you can see it from a more indigenous perspective, from the writers that actually scribed it and the people that lived it, as opposed to what we see today and looking back on it, how we interpret it. See, what Christianity does is that Christianity uses the New Testament lens to interpret the Old Testament. That's incorrect. Who does that? Nobody did that. Matter of fact, when they was writing the text, they didn't even believe that. You know how? Because they kept citing stuff in the Old Testament. But this is what Christians do today. They say, oh, no, revelation is progressive. And when the apostles got it, they got the full revelation. And before them, the prophets didn't see the things that they saw. No, the prophets did see the things that they saw. The difference is you're looking at things as it pertains to you and not Israel. See, that's the problem. That's the problem. Your bias is interpreted and means to the church today, as opposed to looking to see that it was meant for Israel. The prophets in the past meant it for Israel, with the grafting of Gentiles as a byproduct of that.
Which gives rise to the spookiness going on in a lot of these quote unquote religious institutions. Yeah, appreciate it.
Anytime. So thank you, KZ, for that. Let me see if I can go back along the rounds. Lion Bear, you're next.
Yo, what's up, man? You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. What's going on, brother?
What's up, man? You got a little upset with me, man, when I put my little comment in there, man.
Bro, look at me. Do I look upset? I'm having fun, man. This is fun. I love it.
Me too.
But look, let me ask you, have you heard of the Mimi virus and the Mama virus?
Yes.
Okay. So if you go into the Mimi virus and the Mama virus, what makes that virus distinct from the other viruses that we've put in the taxonomy of viruses?
So I'm not an expert by any means.
Oh,
right?
Neither one of us are. So that's fine.
Okay. So from what I looked at with the Mimi virus, for example, I know that they're extremely large.
Correct. That's the first thing.
And
bigger than some grams of bacteria.
Right. Absolutely. And that's pretty much all I know. I know that they're larger. Can you still hear me?
Correct. And now also they can be infected by other viruses. Did you know that? That is interesting. And they also have proteins that begin to do the biosynthesis process. And now that's one of the things of things that are alive. Proteins. You have carbon in proteins, right? Okay. Carbon is what marks being alive.
Let's start over. And you're making a good point, right? But first, let's define what you consider living, right? Because we have to define it first to have a working definition before we can say our virus is quote unquote life.
And I'm gonna put one up here while you're talking. You give me one. Is this going to be from your perspective, or you gonna give us a source?
It's going to be from my perspective based on what I read, right?
Sure. Because
there's now if you look up the scientific definition of living or life, there is no consensus for that, right?
Correct. There's no. It's controversial. Let's put it like that.
Right. Correct. So for me, I would think that it could reproduce. It could be autonomous, sustain itself. What else? Has a metabolism. It has a metabolism, so it can metabolize to produce some type of energy.
Correct.
Probably a couple more things that I could throw in there, but those three basic things are things that I would look for to consider something life. Or then react to stimuli. It has to be able to react to its environment. Those are 3 or 4 things that I would list to categorize what is life and what is non-life.
All right. So say those 4 things again. The first thing you said was?
I said reproduce. It can reproduce.
Okay, reproduce. All right. What's the second thing?
React to stimuli.
React to stimuli. I think that was the 4th thing, but.
Well, I'm just listing them out. No particular order.
Okay, no problem. Go to the next one.
Can be autonomous.
Autonomous how?
Be on its own and sustain itself.
Okay, and then what was the 4th one?
Here, and I guess I'll use this example. If a human gets hungry, a person gets hungry, they can actively seek out food.
Correct.
Okay, if a plant needs to look for water, its roots grow deeper into the ground to find a water source. That's what I mean by that, okay?
Okay, gotcha. So autonomous. Now we're looking at it from a more evolved perspective, but we're gonna have to deal with basic eukaryotes and prokaryotes, right? So you said autonomous, reactive system, and reproduction. There was one other thing that you said.
Metabolism.
Metabolism.
Have a metabolism.
All right. Now, here's one of the issues you have looking at this, right? When you say autonomous, are parasites autonomous?
What form of parasite? You mean
Any
like
parasite? Any parasite? Are they autonomous?
like a what are them things called that like
By
they hang on
definition, are parasites autonomous?
a leech?
You could say that as one, yeah. Or let's go to microorganisms, right?
But a leech will seek out something to latch onto, right? So that I would consider that life.
Correct.
Right? So parasites may fall into that category. Yeah.
Let's talk about parasites, intracellular parasites like mycobacterium, right? Mycobacterium cannot live independently of itself. It must live inside the cell of another organism to sustain itself. To have any degree of reproduction, it must live inside a cell. We can bring it up right. I'll bring it up right now so you can see what I'm talking about. Because on a microorganism level, parasites need a host to survive for things that they cannot do on their own. They cannot live autonomously outside of the host. They need a host cell or a host body. Just like worms that we have that grow in our intestine, there are certain elements in our gastrointestinal environment that help them to thrive that they can't get outside of us. So parasites are not autonomous because they need a host. They cannot live without a host, right?
So if a host is not readily available for them,
they will die.
Okay, they will die. But can they seek a host per se?
Correct. That's what viruses do. Viruses seek a host.
No, a virus is carried from the air and whatnot. It's not actively doing anything.
It is actively doing anything. How does it enter into a cell if it's not actively doing anything?
Because it's carried.
No. How does it find the cell? Viruses can't just, there's viruses that have what's called tropism, which is a range of cells that they can infect, right? So certain viruses can only infect one type of cell. Some can infect many different types of cells, right? How do they reach those cells and connect to those specific cells?
Okay, check it out, bro.
Sure.
And I like to use like analogies. You can call them
sure.
Right? Okay, I go to the grocery store. I use a brown paper bag. All right, put groceries in it and take the paper bag home. Okay. I carry the paper bag. The bag didn't do anything. So it's the same thing with the virus. It's going to be carried through whatever means.
So what's carrying the virus in the bloodstream?
So what I'm saying is that the virus is not actively doing anything to make this happen. It's passive.
So it does, because in order for it to go through what's called endocytosis, where it gets into the cell, the virus has to do something. It has to communicate with the receptors on the surface of the cell. Because if that doesn't happen, it cannot get into the cell. This is how when you have virions in your body and they get, brought to your immune system, they respond to stimuli. And that stimuli comes from messengers on the surface of the cell that attract the virion to the cell. And then the virion enters into the cell once it makes that key and lock connection.
There is nothing that I've read on viruses, and I'm pretty sure that you said you went to school for at John Jay and whatnot.
No, that was something different. That was working with something different. But this is independent.
There's nothing that I've read to show that viruses react to stimuli. Now I've never heard that before. I've never heard that before. So if you could show me something, or maybe just directly, I want you to. But if you're saying that's something, then that's something.
So let me do this, right? Do you have what's your email?
Oh, here you go. DB.
No, I'm sending you books so we can read the same thing, right? I want you to have the book because I don't want to just cite a source and show you something. I want you to actually have the book so we can have these type of dialogue so we can build on it. So I'm saying I'm going to send you some books on virology so that way we can see, because there's more than one book written or article written on virology, and there's different schools of thought in that realm of virology, right? So there's some that say that viruses respond to stimuli based on how they enter into cells. There's a whole process and proteins that are coded so that way it can be responsive, because if the virus is not responsive, it's not going to go into the cell. Nothing's going to happen if the viruses, matter of fact, viruses can be neutralized in the bloodstream, where even if they come into contact with the cell, nothing will happen. But if nothing is neutralizing it, then it responds to the surface of the cells and is able to enter into the cell.
I would describe it more as a chemical reaction, brother. Like when the virus meets up with the host cell, there's a chemical reaction that happens. Nothing. The virus is not doing anything. It's carrying the information, the DNA, the RNA.
Mhm.
When it meets with that host cell, there's a chemical reaction that takes place, and the cell does everything.
The cell does everything. Well,
I'm generally speaking, brother. So I wouldn't call it stimuli. It's just information. So the cell gets the information and does things with the information that the virus has. It's passive.
correct. So the response to stimuli is the thing I think that we will look at other sources, right? Because like you said, we're not experts. So we'll go back to the experts and see what they say in regards to viruses responding to stimuli. And like I said, there's many different schools of thought, just like the same thing we said was controversial. What started this conversation, are cells alive or are they dead? And that's based on relative definitions that define what life is, right?
Absolutely.
So what I was trying to do is work it within your context, right? Because you gave a definition, and I'm trying to see if it can meet the requirements of your definition. And your definition will vary across the board depending upon what virologists we ask in regards to viruses, right? What I was going to
Let me ask you this: what's your definition
of life?
Yeah.
Yes, it's similar to the things. It's similar to the things that you said, with the exception of parasites. Parasites are completely different. Parasites, which a virus is, they act differently than we see other organisms that we would define as being alive, because they need a host. There's things that they cannot do on their own that the host does for them. Like when you say that the cell brings the actual virion in, well, parasites, they have the cell has to allow them to come in, because they themselves cannot do what they need from the host cell. So they are dependent upon other mechanics of that cell so it can live or do whatever function it needs. Even to reproduce, it needs to do it in that cell. It uses the machinery of that cell. It survives in the cytoplasm of that cell. It relies on that cell. It cannot do it autonomously on its own. Even its metabolism is limited or even non-existent until it's inside the cell. Because when it is born, it's born inside the cell. The cell is doing the work for it. When it buds off, it's looking for another cell to live in to do the same thing all over again. Intracellular parasites are very different than other organisms, like you said, that are autonomous, like bacterium and other things as well. They're totally different kinds of species of organisms. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they require, for their metabolism to work, they require a host. So they can't do it on their own. So if you're going to say metabolism, independent metabolism makes something alive, or can dependent metabolism work as well? Because the virus relies on the metabolism of the cell in order for it to do what it does. Because if the cell's metabolism is unregulated, nothing can happen.
No, but see, so what I'm thinking, right?
Sure.
A cow eats grass, it takes that grass and turns it into proteins and things so that it produces energy for that particular animal, right? We're using cow, for example.
Mhm.
Viruses don't do that. Viruses don't have any way of taking things and synthesizing proteins, whatever the heck you want to call it, to produce energy. So I would say no. It would have to be independent.
Okay, you say it would have to be independent. So even any kind of intracellular parasite or microparasites, would they be considered alive as well?
Well, I haven't looked into those. Maybe you could give me an example of one.
Yeah, I just did. So the mycobacterium, look it up. Look up mycobacterium. mycobacterium. And this is one of the agents, the pathogens that causes tuberculosis, right? Or us with respiratory failure and things of that nature. And these are bacteria that have a parasitic nature, that they infect cells in order for them to live. Like the cells have to let you in. You can't disrupt the cell membrane, because then the cell will die. That's called lysis, right? So you can't do that. So the cell has to bring you in. So that's what the cell does with these mycobacterium. The mycobacterium comes up to the cell and it makes contact with the cell, and the cell brings it inside. Right.
But bacteria are considered life.
Mycobacteria, yes. Regular gram-positive, gram-negative bacteria, the rod-shaped bacteria, is separate. But mycobacterium is a different type of bacteria that cannot live independent of its own, and it needs a host to do any other functions of life. It cannot do it on its own. That's the difference between regular bacteria and these mycobacteria.
Okay, so you bring up the mycobacterium to
show that there are organisms that cannot autonomously do things like metabolism or operate independent of itself to go get its own food. Like you said, it needs a host to help it perform most of these tasks. It cannot do it on its own. It's relying on the host cell.
Okay.
So this is just something I'm just throwing out there because I like that you're bringing this up. I think this is excellent, right? This is how I learn. This is how other people learn when we have conversations like this. And we talk about these things because that's why I want to bring these things up. And that's why I brought up the Mimi virus and the Mama virus, because they've changed the landscape of virology, because they can be infected by another virus. And they do things like metabolism. In order for you to synthesize protein, you have to have a metabolism. They have that. And they do this before they even infect a cell. Or not a cell, they actually infect amoebas, right?
But mycobacterium right now?
No. I'm talking about the Mimi viruses and the Mama viruses, right? So they start to synthesize proteins before. Now you need a metabolism to do that. That's why you have metabolism there to synthesize proteins. You need a metabolism to break these things down, sugars, proteins, whatever, in order for you to have the energy to do anything else. There's some viruses that can't do none of that on its own, but there's another class of viruses that can, and that are not small. Their size, the Mimi viruses and the Mama viruses are bigger than the Mimi viruses, but they're part of that same family, that they start to do things that are different than other viruses. And even the amount of their genome, because most viruses have maybe a 30 kilobase or more, depending upon the genome size. Their genome is way bigger than that. And they've never seen this in any other bacteria before they come across this, which means they're saying there's, and I've seen this on that pandemic series that's on Netflix. They even mentioned it on there. They said there's 1.5 billion strains of bacteria that we don't even know about.
Absolutely.
So if there's viruses and bacteria we don't know about, then we don't know if there's other viruses that are more advanced than the ones that we've been studying, that over time through evolution had to become more simpler in order to survive. Where
that's a fallacy you just used on me, brother. Okay.
Go ahead.
Right? That was slick. That was slick, brother. All right. You saying because we don't know of all the viruses that you can't do that. So let's not do that.
So what I'm saying is it's not a fallacy, because I'm using recent discoveries to prove my point. The Mimi cry and Mama cry virus.
You didn't do that.
But
you said we have not discovered.
So let's not deal with the absence of evidence, right? Let's deal with what we do have. We have the Mimi virus and the Mama virus. These viruses are unlike any other viruses that we've ever seen, and the only viruses that can be infected by another virus. And the only viruses with the size that it has and the greatest amount of proteins that it contains, with the largest genome than any other virus that we've ever seen, which means a reclassification of viruses had to be done once they discovered this. So what only thing that I'm saying to you is, because this was a recent discovery that was found in a water tower somewhere in Europe, they just found this thing in there. It's like, oh, what the heck is this? They first thought it was a piece of bacteria. Then they started to look at it further. Oh, this ain't a bacteria. You've never seen nothing like this before. It changed the classification or the taxonomic system of how you identify what a virus is. So what I'm simply saying to you is, over time, as we make more discoveries, it will help us to understand viruses as a whole. Now, maybe the viruses we have now have a loss of a lot of those features over time through evolution, which is another thing that's being proposed, right? But when we talk about viruses as a general definition, are they alive? We have to also consider these that can do certain things that other viruses can't do, but they're in the same classification. They're still called viruses. So let me show you this one last thing, and let me just move on to the next person before they drop off. And again, listen, you want me to call you Lion Bear? Is there another name you want me to call you? Is Lion Bear cool?
Yeah, just call me Lion Bear, bro.
Lion Bear, all right.
You call me Dennis, man. My name is Dennis.
All right, Dennis, I love these conversations because I think in our community, we should talk about these things, because it gives you a broader perspective to actually study the culture that we have when we understand science, right? And I think that this type of stuff are things that we have to study as a community, so we can have that same scientific method when it comes to our culture and reconstructing the things that we do, right? To make sure it's sound and it's biblical and it's not something that was a recent construct, right? So I appreciate you coming on here and sharing that with me. And I think that's great. Here's an article that I want you to get. It's called Defining Life, the Virus Viewpoint. And I'm going to give you the link. I'm going to drop it in the chat so you have the link. and you can check it out for yourself. Okay, let me put it in there for you so you can see it. And this goes into, it's a whole article on NCBI, which is a vetted source for articles, scientific and medical articles that are being there. A lot of them are peer reviewed, etc. So this is a valid source that I'm giving you, right? And if you go and look at this article, the link is going to be there in the chat, so you can click on it and look at it along with me. You'll see that in the abstract, I mean, you can read the whole thing, but right now we can just focus on the abstract. In the abstract, they go into the classification in regards to what this author, who is somebody who is a mover and shaker in this field, has defined life. But they also say it's controversial, which means it has not been settled. There's no consensus. Either you're on this side or that side. I'm on one side, you're on the other side. And the experts say it's controversial, which means it can go either way. This is why new discoveries are important, like the Mimi virus and the Mama virus, which helps these type of questions get answered, right? So it says, are viruses alive? Until very recently, answering this question was often negative, and viruses were not considered in discussions on the origin and definition of life. This situation is rapidly changing, and it says, following several discoveries that have modified our vision of viruses. And I explained one of those discoveries to you. It has been recognized that viruses have played and still play a major innovative role in the evolution of cellular organisms, to the point where they believe that we carry in our genome some DNA from viruses from the past, right? It says new definitions of viruses have been proposed, and a position in the universal tree of life is actively discussed. Viruses are no more confused with their virions, but can be viewed as complex living entities that transform the infected cell into a novel organism, the virus producing virions. Because the definition of virus itself, it doesn't come into play until that virion enters into the host, okay? I suggest here to define life and historical process as the mode of existence of ribosome encoding organism cells and capsid encoding organism viruses and their ancestors. I propose to define an organism as an ensemble of integrated organs, molecular and cellular, producing individuals evolving through natural selection. The origin of life on our planet will correspond to the establishment of the first organism corresponding to this definition. And when you get a chance to read the entire article, and then we can come back and discuss it, and you'll see there's other peer reviews of this article, etc., and then we can get into it further. But you'll see that this particular author, right, an expert in the field, is saying that viruses are defined as being considered alive. Now, there's other experts that disagree with him and others that agree with him. There's no consensus on this. So you're making your point, and it's valid. All I'm doing is peer reviewing it as you're telling me. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just peer reviewing it. And then I'm giving you my position, and what you're doing, you're peer reviewing what I'm saying. You're critiquing what I'm saying. The purpose of this is so that we can build together and see if there's a common ground at some point based on the things that we're presenting, right? So go back and check that out. And again, that's not my definition. I tried to look at the argument, see where the weight falls on where based on new discovery. So if I was reading this 30 years ago, Mimi viruses, Mama viruses weren't discovered during that time. So this author would have a different perspective, because remember, he said following several discoveries, which has changed the landscape on the definition of whether viruses are alive or not. That's important. Same thing with our Israelite culture. Is when we come across new discoveries that we better are able to interpret the data that we have in the text. And that is important, right? So I appreciate that, my brother Dennis. I appreciate that. And let me see if I can get the other person dropped off.
Hey, no doubt. Hey, and I'll jump off real quick. But the only reason I made that comment. So I listened to that build y'all had last night on Sunday, man. And I don't disagree with the way handles itself and whatnot. But anyway. And you were doing good, man. I'm like, okay, Divine, dropping the dollars, this and the other.
And to the last.
We get to the very end, they ask you that simple question, and you say yes. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, come on, bro. It's like come on, man.
But look at this. But guess what? Because there's no consensus, you can say yes or no and be right and be wrong at the same time, because there's no consensus. True. So if there's a consensus and something in academia, it is presuppose that consensus is the correct viewpoint on how to interpret anything in regards to that subject matter, right? When there's no consensus, it means they're still working on a consensus, because things are changing rapidly. And through new discoveries, it challenges the status quo. So because it's controversial and there's no consensus, years ago, there was a consensus. Oh, they're not alive. But within the past 10, 15, 20 years, they've changed that. They're saying we don't know now. It seems that it could be alive. And then there's experts that do make the proposition that they are alive. So me saying that doesn't make me right, doesn't make me wrong. It's just a position I'm taking because there's no consensus. So if let's say I came back, Amara came back and said, no, viruses, they're not alive. And they gave me all their experts, and I will give them all the experts on this side that will pretty much rebut, maybe not refute, but rebut the things that they're saying because there's no consensus. It tarnished, it degraded because of new discoveries. That's why I was saying, knowing the unknown that's out there that they're speculating on, there could be something else that's a hybrid between a bacteria and virus, and we can show through its genome that it traces back to the earliest viruses, and that the viruses we have now became more simpler because of adaptation. Just like the mycobacterium, they believe that they were regular negative gram rod bacteria, but then over time through adaptations, they lost some things because of mutations, and they required a host to sustain themselves. Mycobacterium was something that was discovered maybe about 50 years ago. Prior to that, they never even knew that thing existed because it was living inside cells. They only identified bacteria outside of cells. This is why current technology helps with discoveries that then lead us to go back and challenge the consensus to say, does it still hold weight now in light of new evidence? That's all.
No doubt, bro. Hey,
So
man,
brother,
yeah, I'm gonna read the article, man, but I appreciate you at least allowing people to come on your platform, man, and talk with you, and even if they disagree, that's always a good thing, right? So I say, hey, man, bless you, man, bless your family, brother, and I'm sure I'll be back on here again when you say something, and you get out of line. No, I'm joking.
No. Jokingly, but do that. That is what I like because it helps me. Right? Because I tell people all the time, you're only as good as your challenge. If you don't have a challenge, you ain't good. If I was just here by myself doing this channel, just me talking, what good is that? If people come to me with different perspective viewpoints and I'm able to hold a conversation with them and stand on my square, then you know the efficacy of what it is that I teach. When you see people shy away from that, that's cultish behavior. They don't want people to go and cross-examine the things that they're saying or teaching because they know that there's some falsehood there, or they have an agenda, ulterior motive that is not conducive with the people. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I do it, my brother. I have to be fair, and I have to allow myself to do this so I can get better and I can stay humble. All right?
No doubt, bro.
All right, King.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, peace. All right, so is there anybody else? Daryl Yahoo. Daryl Yahoo, you there? I'm gonna end off with you because, man, I was supposed to be on here for an hour and a half. See, that's Kayel's fault, man. I blame Kayel for that. Daryl Yahoo, you there?
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
Let me ask you, Kayel. I'm sorry, Daryl. Let me get to you one second. Kayel, what's your position on that? Viruses, are they alive or not?
I believe they're alive. They're alive because how they interact with their environment.
Correct.
I mean, I'm definitely not. That's not my thing. But from my being on the outside researching it, that's what I come to the conclusion of.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to get from your perspective to show people that that nobody's being biased simply because I say something. I require people to think critically. That's why I have this channel, so people can think critically and present things to me. That's how I learn. All right, so I appreciate that. All right, Dariahu, you're up. Dariahu, you there?
Shalom, bro. Can you hear me?
Yeah, shalom, brother. I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I've been in and out of the conversation, but I'm loving it though. I kind of want to switch gears for a minute. And I do want to have a conversation.
Do you want to do it off air? Because if it's not a quick comment or question, because we're about to end, then we can just do it off air after I end this.
Okay, cool. I'll do it off air.
Okay,
that's cool.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end this now, family. So I appreciate everybody for watching. I didn't really get to follow the comments, so I apologize. Anybody that's in there, appreciate your support. Thank you for sticking it out with us. Thank you for your contributions in the group. If anybody did donate, I truly appreciate that. I may have missed it. If you did send a super chat, thank you. If there's anything else that we can do to assist you, our email address is kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Remember the Patreon. We are doing a drawing on the Patreon. We're going to pay somebody's bill up to $200. Okay, the link for the Patreon is right there in the chat. You can click there to pledge any amount, and you'll be eligible if you just submit to us an invoice, so that way we can pay your invoice. And also remember, we have the GoFundMe that we're raising funds for families that are struggling throughout this economic crisis through the coronavirus pandemic. The link for that is there as well. You guys can click that and show your support. And if we can do anything, our email address is kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. And it's in the actual chat. So you guys can click on that if you need to send us any requests, if you want to share information with us, if you have a question, just let us know, and we'll go ahead and take care of y'all. And for everybody else joining in, thank you for watching. Peace and shalom to you, family. And until we meet again, our next Freestyle Friday, which will be this week coming up, tune in, because we're doing a drawing first. And then from there, I have a gift card that I'm giving out. All right. So much love, family. Peace and shalom.